Part 22. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 211. Before I knew it, it was Friday. Yu went to Ning today to sign a contract with Ningco, Ltd. He slept in the dormitory until he woke up naturally. He originally wanted to make an appointment with Boss who he met last time. After all, Luhao's traffic has reached its peak now, and it's time to prepare a brand for him. He is not prepared to follow other people's models or adopt high-end brands. In fact, fishing bait and the like are very profitable. Except for the high cost of kelp silk, other baits, no matter what they are, the cost of any bag will not exceed 80 cents. Moreover, baits across the country are almost the same. They all use food as raw materials, some need to be fermented, and some are directly mixed. In the high-end market, he can't make that kind of money because he doesn't want to hire professional bait makers. He doesn't need the bait to be good enough, he just needs the bait to be cheap enough. That Boss who is an OEM company that deals in fishing gear and bait. Li Yuan also has the other party's contact information, so it shouldn't be difficult to discuss a project. There is no point in grabbing the high-end market. The investment is not proportional to the effort, which means that the reputation is better. For real fishermen, a bag of bait worth more than 10 yuan is not cost-effective. I'm about to call the driver. Then I saw the message Cao Yuan sent early in the morning. A string of numbers. What a fool. We usually play triple encryption. I'm doing this just to make things easier for the boss. It's so convenient that I shouldn't wear it. How does the boss know? I really have nothing to wear today. Li Yuan now believes that Cao Yuan's original evaluation of herself was true. Stop playing with your own threshold. I won't accompany you crazy when the time comes. Hey, my threshold is money. As long as the boss is willing to add money, I can reach any height the boss wants in 3 seconds. Li Yuan thought about it. Xu Yanlin had just gone to a new school. On the first Friday, she should have dinner with her roommates. So I sent a message to Xu Yanlin, telling her that she was busy at night and wouldn't go there, and asked her to have fun with her roommate. At 10 o'clock in the evening, you have arranged everything that needs to be arranged, and I will wait for you at the school gate. He sent it to Cao Yuan. Soon, Cao Yuan responded. Thank you, boss, for turning over the cards. Can I have a drink? Can. Li Yuan shook his head. Maybe some things are destined by nature. He is not a normal man, so naturally it is difficult to meet a normal girl. But it was satisfying enough to please him, and he didn't need true feelings. Li Yuan called Boss Hu, and then the two met in Boss Hu's office. Hu Weizong was still surprised to receive a call from Li Yuan. Since the last incident with Tiankai shares, he had paid attention to Li Yuan. As a result, this attention shocked him. Li Yuan went from an unknown young man to a capital tycoon in just a few months. Perhaps compared to the whole world, it is nothing. Even in the country, regardless of age, it is average. But in Zhangzhou, he is already the most powerful person. If you add age, he is the most promising person in the country. Anyone worth tens of billions would envy him. Who doesn't want to make money when they are young in their life? If you continue to make money when you are old, you will no longer be able to enjoy wealth. Ask those top rich people, if they were asked to spend hundreds of billions of wealth in exchange for being 18 years old again, I believe no one would refuse. So the first time he saw Li Yuan, he was envious, to the core of his being. This guy is younger than him and richer than him. Mr. Li, it has only been a few months since we last said goodbye, but your reputation has already reached this level in Zhangzhou. If I hadn't really been unable to leave, I would not have dared to invite Mr. Li here. Hu Weizong smiled and went over to shake hands with Li Yuan. I'm young, but I just think Boss Hu is complimenting me. Haha, I'm so jealous. Afterwards, the two entered the office. Although Hu Weizong is worth several hundred million, his life is very ordinary. After all, he works in a factory, so he can't just sit in the office and drink tea every day. It's not like internet companies direct anything. Even more, I still talk about projects with others and bargain with others. After sitting down, Hu Weizong said, Mr. Li said on the phone that he wanted to discuss the project with me, a big boss. It shocked me at the time. I still don't understand how I am qualified to talk to someone in this industry. When Mr. Li sat down to talk together, there was a gap of several grades. Boss Hu, don't put your hat on us. In essence, we in finance are far behind you in industry. Your factory can bring stable happiness to hundreds of families, but we in finance can't recruit many people. If you are not careful, you will put a burden on society. Hu Weizong was confused. Li Yuan's words directly opened up the situation to the sky. Can you still think about it this way? In this situation, if you don't make money, who will? Anyway, Hu Weizong opened the factory because he was not capable enough. Competition in other industries was fierce, and he could not do well. The purpose of opening a factory must be to make money, but he is destined not to make much, otherwise no one would work with him. There is a fart pattern. Mr. Li's words make me so ashamed. Please come here in person today, Mr. Li later, as long as it's something within your ability, Mr. Li will directly quote the price. I promise not to pay back, and I'll do it for the money. Li Yuan smiled and said, then I'll thank Boss Hu first. As for what Hu Weizong said, even ghosts don't believe it. Mr. Li is too polite. I wonder why Mr. Li is here today? I manufacture fishing gear and bait here, but recently I also started manufacturing some learning machines. Li Yuan. You're a OEM manufacturer of bait, why are you aiming a learning machine? Is this reasonable? Boss Hu has even got the electronic product business. The threshold for this industry is not low. What's the point of this? Isn't it just assembly? Just find a few people to train and train them. The main reason is that the price of each item is high. You can earn 20 yuan by assembling one. Those fishing gear and bait, you can earn a few cents per bag of bait. Money. It was only after Hu Weizong started an electronics factory that he realized how profitable electronic products were. Those learning machines are not difficult at all, and their requirements for various accuracy are not high. I just want to make money by selling learning machines. The cost of a learning machine was only 80 yuan, so I was willing to pay 20 yuan for the OEM fee. If you put it on the market, the price will be too high. Everything related to children is expensive. Who could imagine that a learning machine with an overall cost of 100 yuan could be sold for thousands? He even heard that some learning machines in the industry cost only 30 yuan. After all, they use old-fashioned chips and their functions are not complicated. He has just started doing it now and has already received orders for hundreds of thousands of units. When he gets an order for 1 million units, it will exceed his annual profit from bait and fishing gear. But I think the prices of bait on the market are not low. It's not low. The main reason is that this thing is a niche product. The annual sales are only more than 10 billion. When the factory gets it, it would be good to have 2 billion. There are 50 or 60 OEMs across the country. It's pretty good here. Li Yuan nodded. Although you can always see some fishermen around you, in fact, the bait industry has never been considered popular. There are few places to fish in big cities, and those in the countryside can do it themselves. For example, the nest material is made of bran soaked in wine, or wheat soaked in wine, and the fishing bait is directly made of earthworms. In this way, there will be fewer people buying bait. Most baits on the market start at 8 yuan. Calculated, one bag of bait contains 200 grams of bran. However, with the rise of self-media, this industry will expand rapidly. From a market of 10 to 20 billion, it has expanded to a market of 200 billion. Big cities are the main consumption directions of those baits. The trend of fishing among all the people has actually begun to become popular. There are more new black holes than the last. This industry actually has great potential, otherwise Li Yuan would not have made this trip himself. Zhangzhou belongs to the south and has a developed water system. It will also be the mainstream battlefield for fishermen in the future. Boss Hu, we, Jushin Media, have signed a contract with a fisherman, do you know? I know, Lu Hao, he will have 10 million fans soon, right? Hu Weizong gave a thumbs up, he was really envious. In fact, his founderies are not as valuable as Lu Hao. He is also well informed about the news in the industry and knows that many brands want to invite Lu Hao to come over to help them, and even the promotion fees they offer start at several million. Some self-media companies also spent tens or even hundreds of millions to poach Lu Hao, but Jushin Media refused to let him go. Yeah, it's almost 10 million. I just want to customize a brand for him, including fishing gear and bait. Haha, Mr. Li can take a fancy to this little money. It's not easy to get involved in the financial industry now, so I want to earn some annual subscription fees from Jushin Media. Boss Hu, I remember you just promised to give me the lowest price. You can't go back on it. Of course, no problem. How much goods does Mr. Li need? Let's take a look at the quotation first. It's easy to talk about. I'll go get it for Mr. Li right now. A few minutes after Hu Weizong left, he came over with a document. Li Yuan took a look and saw that there were quotes for various fishing gear and bait. There are 5 or 6 levels of fishing rods, and there are more than a dozen bait recipes that can be made, with varying effects. Li Yuan took one look and frowned. Boss Hu, I would like to ask, is this the cost price or the shipping price? Of course it's the shipping price. I don't dare to pretend about the project that Mr. Li wants to do. Li Yuan smiled and said, Boss Hu, at this price, there should be room below, right? Basically, the price quoted for a bag of bait is around 1.5 yuan, which is somewhat inconsistent with Li Yuan's expectations. However, Hu Weizong's products are comprehensive and the scale is large enough. I'm afraid it would be difficult to find someone else to manufacture such a complete set of things. Fishing rods range from 15 to 80, with different grades and different prices. The price is definitely a bit expensive, but Hu Weizong doesn't think he is being taken advantage of. If the cost price was quoted like this, he would just leave. There is still room for discussion. Hu Weizong said helplessly, Mr. Li, there is really no profit from this. Basically, the profit from a bag of bait is only a few cents. After all, labor costs have become more and more expensive in recent years, and my foundry is about to close down. Boss Hu, let's talk about it for less than $3 a dollar, how about that? Mr. Li, it's not that I, Lao Hu, don't give you face. I'm really going to lose money for $1.03. In Hu Weizong's view, Li Yuan could only customize a few million worth of goods. This batch of goods was too small. If he hadn't wanted to make friends with Li Yuan, this quotation would never have appeared. He also has a quotation of 1 yuan and 80 in his hand. For those brands whose demand is tens of millions a year and are very stable, he will definitely be willing to give a price of 1 yuan 3 or even 1 yuan 2. Li Yuan knows very well that if you look at a dime now, you may earn tens or even hundreds of millions in profits in the future. Of course, if the operation fails, he will treat it as a failure and sell Lu Hao immediately to regain his health. I want the first batch of goods worth 100 million. When Hu Weizong heard this, the corner of his mouth twitched, and he immediately said with a smile, Mr. Li told me earlier, I guess I got the wrong quotation. Please wait a moment, I will go and take a look. This Li Yuan knows how to joke. 100 million, then you are my father, Can I still cheat my own father? Because of the customization, he had to reset some templates and make some equipment changes. If the goods were only a few million, his profit would be only 1 million, which was not worth the hassle. But the goods worth 100 million are completely different. He only sells more than 100 million goods a year. Not counting personnel costs, the profit is about 40 million. After deducting the personnel and warehousing costs, the profit is only 20 million. Soon, he brought another quotation. After handing it to Li Yuan, he said, "This quotation is 1 yuan and 3 yuan. There is really no lower quotation. But in terms of bait, I can give Mr. Li another 10 cent less. What do you think?" What OEMs lack most is orders. As for manpower, making bait requires a lot of skills, why not just have hands? Then it's settled. I'll arrange for Jushin Media to come over and sign a contract with Boss Hu in the afternoon. No problem, let's go. I'll treat Mr. Li to a meal. Thank you Mr. Li for taking care of me. That would be disrespectful. Li Yuan thought Hu Weizong was quite good before, and even though he knew he had been cheated, he didn't say anything. He has a very open mind about the gains and losses of making money. Today is just a normal cooperation. He doesn't want to know what Hu Weizong's cost price is, as long as it reaches his psychological bottom line. We ate at a local restaurant together at noon and it tasted quite good. Hu Weizong was also going to get him some game, but he refused. You can be morally corrupt, but you can't break the law and commit crimes. If you must break the law and commit crimes, then do it abroad. China is his base camp. No matter what, he would not be reduced to a greedy mouth. After dinner, he made a phone call to Song Jiajia. The brand logo image designed for Lu Hao has been prepared for a long time. But when they were on the phone, there was something wrong with Song Jiajia's tone. "Li Yuan, Lu Hao wants to change jobs, do you know about this?" "Li Yuan. He dances like crazy. Wait a minute, I'll call him and ask." Li Yuan hung up the call with Song Jiajia and immediately called Lu Hao. "Mouse, what's wrong? I heard that you want to change jobs. It seems that I, the elder brother, have failed you in some way." "Brother Yuan, it was Sister Ran who asked me to leave. Does Zhou Ran want to get involved in the company's operations? They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it." Author, Lao He. Chapter 212. If it were company management, such as when you and the others made decisions, Li Yuan wouldn't even ask. Because smart subordinates will definitely explain clearly. If you don't explain and violate your own arrangements, you can just pack up and leave. But Zhou Ran is different from Lu Hao. The two of them are Li Yuan's childhood friends. No matter what happens, Li Yuan will ask. So he called Zhou Ran. "Why did you call me suddenly? I was still shopping with your wife." "Li Yuan." Mao suddenly said that he wanted to change jobs. "Did Sister Ran agree to it?" "His parents, didn't you make excuses to tell others that Mouse was working here?" Then Mouse's girlfriend, for some unknown reason, found a brokerage company to persuade his parents. I guess he was moved, and then he found me privately. I was too embarrassed to tell him about his parents, so I simply asked him to mention it to Jushin Media. Oh, Mouse may have that thought himself. Well, he likes that girl very much and probably wants to get married. He's only 19 years old. He's getting married in a stupid way. He's just a man with sperm in his head. As if you weren't. I usually give it to others directly without giving it a chance to think about it. 2. Hang up, anyway, you decide for yourself, I still have something to do. Li Yuan probably already understood the situation. Lu Hao has most likely been fooled by Xiao Yu. It seems that taking him to the bathing center a few times has not had much effect, and some things may happen again. Anyway, Li Yuan can accept any result. After all, it is his own choice, and he will not suffer any loss. He called Song Jiajia and said, "Senior, did someone give Lu Hao a quote?" "Yeah, but I can't afford the liquidated damages. I guess I want to persuade Lu Hao to pay the liquidated damages himself, and then join them in vain." "How much liquidated damages has Lu Hao accumulated now?" 500 million. "If it drops to 300 million, ask if any company wants it." Lu Hao didn't use favors to terminate the contract, so he had some conscience. Originally, Li Yuan was planning to pay dividends to his brand, but now that he thought about it, he decided not to do it. Sooner or later, he will be deceived by women. Song Jiajia asked, "Are you really willing to give it up?" With Lu Hao's current worth, he really doesn't have to worry about selling it for 300 million. It's okay, it's cheaper. By the way, help Lu Hao check out the new contract to avoid too many traps in the contract. You are really a good boss. I can't control what other people think. There are some things that we have to face sooner or later. Maybe more anchors will choose to leave. For example, De Yang, who has more than 3 million fans, senior sister feels that each of us with 50,000 yuan a month, can you keep people around? Who doesn't have ambitions? We just have to make sure we don't lose money. Jushin Media's financial report needs to be good, and I'm going to go public in 2 years. Then when all the internet celebrities have gone away, there will only be a small amount of money left. What will you use to go public? There are many chips that can be listed on the market. Then you were planning to create a brand for Lu Hao, what should you do now? Of course I'll keep working on it. I'll just make a few new models and train a group of fishing anchors. I can make him the first brother, and I can make others the first brother. The boss is so awesome. It's all Cao Yuan's fault for using the title boss in a wrong way. Excuse me, senior. Also, another company I recently acquired has a vice president position. Do you want to help senior? You will be paid. In fact, many previous operating models will gradually become unworkable in the future. Management will become less and less important. What matters is decision makers and an advanced system. Future contracts will be in the form of electronic files. Even the work content does not need to be reported to the leader. You only need to report to your own office system. For example, Penguin Group, the largest internet giant in China, has lost countless investments due to the bloatedness of the entire system. Internal departments have too much autonomy and do not cooperate with each other at all, which ultimately leads to the failure of even a good project. If their departments could cooperate with each other, no company would be able to threaten their existence. Times are changing, and so are office models. If you can't keep up, it will be extremely bloated and extremely slow in efficiency. He has his own operating philosophy, so he only needs people who can convey orders, and does not need to be very powerful himself. Song Jiajia said, "Why the vice president?" "Because I am the general manager, and you will be the general manager when I retire. Then dig me out of the coffin when the time comes." No, according to statistics, the average life expectancy of women is 5 years longer than that of men, so theoretically, senior sister should die 2 years later than me. You really dare to ask me to go to Huo's company? I don't have any abilities. Having a clear understanding of yourself is your greatest ability. I think you're scolding me. Ha, it's okay. I'm still busy. Senior sister, just contact Hu Weizong and redesign the brand. Just delay it a little and supply it again in half a year. Okay. After Li Yuan hung up the phone, he called Lu Hao. "Mouse, please tell the company that wants to sign you. If you don't take away the account, the contract will be terminated for 300 million. If you take away the account, it will be 500 million and let them choose." Contact Jushin Media as soon as possible. If it's late, I'm afraid you will be other companies took it away. Okay, thank you, brother Yun. No need to thank me, just choose the path you want and don't regret it in the future. Lu Hao was silent. After a while, he said, I know I will definitely regret it, but I want to get married. I am not worthy of her now. Well, I understand. If I can get married, I will definitely join the family. Li Yun was too lazy to say anything, he just had to carry it himself. He could probably guess what the woman said about Lu Hao. She was just taking advantage of her youth to make some money elsewhere to prepare for her future marriage. It's useless to tell Lu Hao. If you lick a dog, you have to die once to wake up. He didn't need to think that Lu Hao would definitely be kicked out in half a year. Because, Lu Hao really can't do it. The role he empowered would definitely not be 1/10 of its current power without him as the operator. Even if Jushin Media does not hatch new anglers within 6 months, it will be the same when Lu Hao comes back. Just like stock trading, if you sell high and buy low, just treat yourself as AT. However, if he comes back, the treatment will not be so good. After all, he has to make up for the loss caused by the loss of account popularity. He sent a message to Jo Ran Ran. Sister Ran, I betrayed your face this time. A sensible person should know how to repay you, right? You really stick to your roots. Let's talk about it when the time comes. Li Yun returned home and lay on the sofa. Many things are harder than he thought. His advantage now is not that he has more money, but that he is young. He has plenty of time to screen. If the next generation is not screened enough, there will be the next generation. Perhaps because his children were born relatively early, he was able to screen out the next generation. The foundation of people of his generation is so poor that no matter how hard they cultivate, it is difficult to cultivate the form. Especially Fa Xiao around him. Jo Ran Ran, who was in jail as a teenager, turned out to be the most understanding person in life. He once really thought that Jo Ran Ran wanted to interfere in his affairs, but once she intervened, the nature changed. It seems fine now, just like before. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Li Yun received news from Yao Yingsong and made an appointment with Mindray Medicine on Saturday. At about 4 o'clock, Yu also sent a message. The process with Ningco Limited is already going through and it is expected to be completed by next Monday. It's already mid-December. There is still 1.5 months until the Chinese New Year. This year, there is a high probability that it will not be that simple. His investment is not a secret. In a company as big as his, any equity change will definitely make the news. Moreover, Zhangzhou Taxation Department is still keeping an eye on Qingtian Capital's account. When they find out that there is no money in the account, many things will no longer be a secret. It's time for a showdown. In fact, he is not ready yet. He used to not be afraid of others seeing her trump card, because he felt that it would be okay to focus on his own affairs and be above board. But now, he can't ignore the existence of Shabai. There's always someone to stir things up. It is inevitable to keep some trump cards in your hand. It has been 3 weeks since I started trading Bitcoin, and it has basically not moved this week. From the initial price of $6,000, it has now reached $14,000. Especially in the past 2 days, it has risen by more than 20 points every day. This shows that he did not cause too much of a butterfly effect and the overall trend is boundless. The next week, it will go straight to $19,000, then fall back and climb again to $20,000. Seeing that the daily turnover exceeds $20 billion, the entire market is going crazy, which means that the first wave of capital harvesting has begun. Perhaps they themselves would not have thought that a financial meat grinder would be built in the future, with tens of billions of dollars fighting in it every day, and the global financial landscape would change as a result. There are still bankers in Bitcoin now, but from next year onwards, there will be no real bankers. The situation will definitely become different by then, and if he ends up, he will inevitably deviate. Unless he is forced to do so, he can only play with a small amount of money. Anyway, he has made enough this time. At $19,000, he will clear out 60% of his contract, and the remaining 40% of his contract will be cleared out at $20,000. It doesn't make sense for him to make money like this now because he can't spend the money. In fact, in this world, people who make money are very good, and maybe those who spend money are also very good. Especially being able to spend money where you want to go is no more difficult than earning the same amount of money. What he lacks now is people to spend money. If you don't spend it, it's a sum that will never be used. After thinking for a while, I didn't decide on the candidate. Boss, my roommate, and I went out for dinner. Are you satisfied with today's outfit? Picture. Caounun sent a photo of herself on campus. Judging from the clothes, it should have been taken just now. Wearing flesh-colored leggings and a velvet-edged cotton skirt, she looked like she was walking on a railroad track. Her body was slightly tilted, and she raised one leg to create a cute pose. Li Yuan originally wanted to reply with a few sentences, but the phone suddenly rang. An unknown number. He answered without much hesitation. Hello. Hello, are you Mr. Li Yuan? Yes, who are you? What can I do? Judging from the voice, the other party is very powerful, and the other party should be someone I have never seen before. I am Yao Yingsong's leader. I am calling this time to ask what tasks Mr. Li has arranged for him. Li Yuan. Are there any arrangements? You wouldn't ask Yao Yingsong yourself? I called myself specifically because I was still thinking about what I didn't do before. He said, there are no arrangements. I have been feeling a little unwell recently and haven't been to the company for a long time. Oh, I heard that he negotiated for the equity of Ningco, Limited, and I was worried that if he took on such an important role when he first arrived, he would delay Mr. Li's major events. We have a very happy cooperation. If Mr. Li has any business difficulties, you can communicate with us. After all, Yao Yingsong has only worked for a year. Li Yuan, actually, I don't know about this either. I don't know why they did this. What? Mr. Li doesn't even know? This Yao Yingsong is too bold. He doesn't know that we and Mr. Li are cooperating at a critical moment. Can't there be any surprises? Li Yuan took a deep breath and said, actually, it's okay. Ningco, Limited is a good company. Maybe it's because I've been recuperating recently and they have nothing to do, so they just wanted to help me spend some money. After all, the company has always invested. Department. Really? It's good that it didn't delay Mr. Li's important events. Mr. Li, how is your health now? Do you need us to do anything? It's nothing serious. The second phase of the fund should be launched next week. Mr. Li's health is still important. I can put the work aside for now. I just happened to call Yao Yingsong back to prevent him from causing trouble to Mr. Li. Li Yuan knew it. Of course he could promise the other party and just ask them to call Yao Yingsong back. But can't do that. After all, Yao Yingsong had already negotiated a deal for him, and getting angry now would only intensify the conflict between the two parties. Everyone is restraining, it depends on who can take the initiative next. It's okay, it's okay. My health is almost healed. The second phase of the fund will definitely be able to operate normally next week. Thank you for your hard work, Mr. Li. Mr. Li doesn't have to work so hard this time. There is still 1.5 months to celebrate the new year. Just be able to liquidate the second phase before the Chinese New Year. Your liquidation speed was so fast last time that we didn't even react. Please slow down a little this time, so that we mediocre people can fully experience Mr. Li's abilities. Li Yuan frowned. He did the first grade of junior high school, and someone else did the 15th grade. Leader, there is no problem in liquidating the company before the year. After Li Yuan finished speaking, there was an obvious silence on the other side of the phone. Then he said with a smile, "Haha, Mr. Li, don't be anxious. Your health is important. If you really can't do it, it won't matter after the new year. After all, even my boss said that even if you are given $100 billion, he won't change it. It's okay. It only takes less than a month and a half to earn a mere $8.5 billion. I also want to take an early vacation and go home for the new year, but is there anything Mr. Li needs us to do? In the next month, I need to have more freedom and not do the traditional market." Li Yuan decided to take up this challenge. Because if you take a step back, it will be difficult to come back later. Even if you have that ability, you still have to work several times harder. The first phase establishes authority, the second phase brings power. From now on, only he has the final say on this fund, and no one can interfere. Mr. Li, if you don't do the traditional market, the risk is very high. Isn't the risk directly proportional to the reward? The bigger the wind and waves, the fewer people go fishing at sea, and the more expensive the fish is, isn't it? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 213. The big national funds are trying to take the initiative because they know that it is almost impossible for Li Yuan to liquidate in the remaining 1.5 months. They must know what Yao Yingsong is doing, and it is precisely because they know this that they dare to have a showdown with Li Yuan. Unexpectedly, Li Yuan accepted the call. They were a little confused. Could this guy Li Yuan really do this? They did not doubt Li Yuan's ability, they simply felt that no matter how powerful he was, he would not be able to trade against the trend. In a month and a half, they believed that Li Yuan could double or triple, but 6 times. As long as they are still human, they don't believe that Li Yuan can do it. The bigger the storm, the more expensive the fish, and the bigger the storm, the faster the death. But they had no reason to refuse. After all, Li Yuan was qualified to negotiate terms with them. If Li Yuan fails to do so this time, then in the third phase they will definitely ask to reduce part of Li Yuan's share in order to maximize their own interests. No matter how stiff the fight is, we still have to cooperate when we should cooperate. Isn't it right to give up some of the benefits if we fail in the game? If Li Yuan successfully liquidates the liquidation before the year, then Li Yuan called Yao Yingsong. "Over there, please transfer 10 billion to your account first. I will open the second phase tomorrow, and the subsequent contracts will be filled when you come back." Now that he has taken over the job, Li Yuan's only chance is to seize every day. It is impossible to make a profit in the stock market. Even if you work hard for a month, your profit will be doubled by the end of the year. The reason is not enough trading time. Even if you trade for 6 or 7 hours a day, after a month and a half, you still don't have much time. Time is the most important factor in trading. Especially when the current global market situation is not good, basically we can only rely on time to slowly grind away. A little bit of tens of millions. 1.5 months, which means there are only 30 trading days, and there are also various holidays, such as New Year's Day, Christmas, and other Western holidays. Therefore, even if you enter the market directly next Monday, there will only be about 24 trading days at most. Time and space are too small. Bitcoin is different. Bitcoin trades 24 hours a day, all year round. It's just a bit illegal. Therefore, he did not use his own money, and all 10 billion shares were given to the National Fund. It is to completely gain the right to speak on this fund. As for the loss of profits, there will be plenty of opportunities to make up for it in the future. Boss, 10 billion. Yao Yingsong thought he heard wrongly. Well, 10 billion will be credited to the account at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. You should be busy with other things first. You are not needed here for the time being. Okay, I'll make arrangements right away. Yao Yingsong still has many questions. Tomorrow is Saturday. What does Li Yuan need funds for? Most markets are closed on Saturdays. Almost from this point, he could confirm that Li Yuan was definitely not going into the mainstream market. So, he mentioned this matter when he was on the phone with his boss. Then something unexpected happened. The leader had no problems at all. This means the game between the two sides has reached fever pitch. It doesn't matter if you break the rules in secret, as long as you maintain the rules on the surface. The outcome of the game depends on what Li Yuan can do this time. Inexplicably, his interests began to tilt towards Li Yuan. If Li Yuan can succeed this time, it will definitely be good news for him. No one can threaten his position in the future. As long as Li Yuan continues to be good, he can always rest on his credit book and enjoy the honor. He couldn't sleep, and he knew very well that the gears of his destiny had begun to turn at this time, and they would not change according to his will. The results will be available before the year. Once Li Yuan fails to do so, he will inevitably become the opposite of Li Yuan. After all, his job is not at Qingtian Capital, and he will definitely be a villain in the future. Unable to sleep, I started preparing for the meeting during the day. The CEO of Mindray Pharmaceuticals is not easy to talk to, and the conditions offered are insufficient, making it difficult to achieve cooperation. The most commonly used means of negotiation is deduction. His mind is filtering information over and over again, deducing the changes that may be encountered during the day, and how to make the best use of the chips in his hand. In the evening, Li Yuan did not let the driver drive, but drove himself to the west gate of Zhangzhou University. He stopped slightly to the side so as not to attract attention. Then he sent a message to Cao Yuan and sat in the car waiting slowly. After waiting for less than 10 minutes, Cao Yuan came over. She opened the back door first, and after finding Li Yuan in the driver's seat, she decisively walked to the front and opened the passenger door. Her cheeks were a little red, and she could smell a little alcohol. After getting on the passenger seat, Cao Yuan smiled and said, "Boss, I haven't eaten enough yet." "Then go back and order takeout." "No, I want to eat it now." Cao Yuan is trying hard to prove to Li Yuan that he is not losing money on more than 100,000 yuan a month. Li Yuan didn't like drinking at first, but the slight smell of alcohol on Cao Yuan was unexpectedly very pleasant. Especially her slightly tipsy look and her nasal hum, as if she was struggling between half-death and death. "Sleep. Take a taxi back to school tomorrow, and don't send me messages recently. I'm busy. But what should I do if I miss my boss? Then save it. It's exam month soon, so take the exam well." "Okay, I'll save a little more." Then, does the boss need me to apply for a librarian? After the holidays, there will be no one in the library. I can work part-time for a few days. Can't you think about your exam carefully? This is my exam. If I pass the boss's assessment, I will get the money next month. After the holidays, just go home honestly and don't think about all the things you have and don't have. Does the boss want to go to my hometown? No one lives in my hometown village now. The environment is very beautiful. If the boss wants me to take a photo of you in a dilapidated style, that's fine. Li Yuan. Cao Yuan was working hard to set up a scene for him. "Sleep first, talk about it later." "Hee, boss, I will really like you." Cao Yuan received no response and only felt Li Yuan's well-proportioned breathing. Recently, she heard some rumors at school, that is, Li Yuan donated 100 million to Zhangzhou Institute of Technology. And along with this rumor, there is another rumor. Li Yuan promised to donate 1 year's salary to Zhangzhou University. Li Yuan's original annual salary was 27 million, but at the last moment, his salary was reduced to 1 yuan. This matter has spread among students. Li Yuan seldom pays attention to this, and most likely he doesn't know about it yet. In fact, this matter was spread intentionally by the school, and the purpose was to put Li Yuan on the fire. The school doesn't need to take responsibility. Anyway, they just insist that it wasn't their own fault. It will only damage Li Yuan's reputation and take a hit to his reputation at Zhangzhou University. Originally, she wanted to talk to Li Yuan about this matter, but she found that Li Yuan seemed very tired. After thinking about it, she fell asleep. When I woke up the next day, Li Yuan was no longer around, but I just received a message on WeChat. Remember to lock the door before you leave, and don't stay here too long. She definitely doesn't dare to stay here forever, if Li Yuan's girlfriend comes back. Her first principle is not to cause trouble to Li Yuan. After cleaning up, she went downstairs and took a taxi. But in the end, he decided to tell Li Yuan about the school. Anyway, she didn't have the ability to do anything, so she just didn't let Li Yuan be kept in the dark. After Li Yuan came to the company, there was no one else in the company except 4 traders. This time you don't even need too many traders, 4 is enough. The other few are reserved for changing shifts. He came too late, he only came over at 9 o'clock. When he came to the trading room, Li Yuan checked his account and then connected to the trading platform. Today's task is to open a contract, use twice the leverage to go long, pay attention to maintain a good frequency, and the single fund does not exceed $5 million. After the explanation, Li Yuan was watching from the side. It was okay in the early stage, but his current capital entry is at the stage of carrying a sedan chair. For the bankers inside, the more the better. But a day or two later, when he plays for the first time, he won't be able to walk away. After all, if he is not careful, he may be eaten up by the funds inside. At present, it can stably rise to the range of $14,000 to $19,000. Within this range, any amount of funds can be absorbed. But Li Yuan wanted to prevent people inside from escaping, so at this point in time, the most anxious thing is the national fund. Li Yuan took away 10 billion. Although they were willing to give it, they were anxious. The contract has not been completed yet. For the safety of funds, we can only supervise Li Yuan's account. Then, I saw Li Yuan rushing directly into an off-board system. They finally understood why Li Yuan was so kind this time and directly gave them his entire share of 10 billion. Emotionally, he also knows that Bitcoin is already a prohibited project. In fact, Bitcoin is essentially not much different from stocks. They are both financial games. It's just that the gaming inside is so intense, with funds fighting for it 24 hours a day, that it's almost impossible for normal people to make money there unless they're lucky and not greedy. It's a place where trading ability is purely competed, with no rules. The less rules there are, the bloodier the game will be. No entry is allowed for everyone's benefit. Li Yuan rushed in and accidentally lost all $1.5 billion in it. It's not that they don't allow Li Yuan to make mistakes. After all, Li Yuan made so much money last time. There's absolutely no point in making a mistake here. They could directly restrict Li Yuan's account, but what Li Yuan said yesterday was still there, and they were unwilling to do so. Once Li Yuan's account is restricted, it means that what was said yesterday will not count. Naturally, the National Large Fund cannot use Yao Yingsong as an excuse to work for Li Yuan. Never mind, let him do it. Anyway, if you lose, you will lose, as long as you don't open a short order. An empty order is a bottomless pit. Anyway, as long as they lose everything, Li Yuan will have to admit defeat. By taking advantage of this incident, Li Yuan may be embarrassed to ask for a share later. Of course, they also began to urge Yao Yingsong to go back quickly. At least Yao Yingsong could compile a report for them after he returned. It is impossible to keep an eye on Li Yuan's account every day. There are not many people with this kind of authority, and everyone has their own things to do. Arrange for people below to watch. They were worried that if it was leaked, it would cause great trouble to Li Yuan. Cooperating with Li Yuan is not a secret, but Li Yuan's position and operation data are absolutely invisible to ordinary people. Whenever data leaks in this area, either check the few people at Qingtian Capital or the few people on their side. The more people who see it, the harder it is to investigate. It's a pity that Yao Yingsong won't be able to come back in a day or two. After all, even if the agreement is reached with Mindray Pharmaceuticals, the subsequent contract process will still take several days. If everything goes well, Yao Yingsong will not be able to come back until next Tuesday. Just like that, Saturday passed. Li Yuan stayed in the company for 10 hours. After the traders changed shifts, Li Yuan stayed with them for an hour to familiarize them with his ideas. Then, he drove back to rest. The phone was placed beside the bed, and the laptop was turned off to sleep mode. Once someone calls him, he has to wake up, look at the disk data, and then give instructions. On the first day, the overall situation did not deviate much, and Li Yuan had been estimating the dealer's bottom line. The data I learned in my previous life can only be used as a reference and may change at any time. After he woke up, he took a look at the data and then went to wash up. Next, he will not go to the company again, but will always be at home. If he were in the company, he would not be able to operate another contract in his hand. Once he was attacked, he would have almost no leeway. So in this case, the rules are almost completely broken. For example, the door to the trading room is not closed now, and there is a person outside to answer the phone. Li Yuan even asked people to shut down the cameras in the trading room. At this time, the price of Bitcoin, as his funds continued to enter the market, had risen to $16,000. It easily increased by more than 10 points, which is very exciting. I ordered takeout first, then sat on the sofa and put my laptop on my lap. He began to pull out all the night bands and read them bit by bit. As he looked at it, he felt something was wrong. Maybe it's because his contract is worth more than $1 billion, and there's a lot of chips in it that are running away. He couldn't tell whether it belonged to the dealer or not. But at this time it can only be regarded as the dealer's. The banker running like this is a typical short squeeze. Li Yuan's hands were not idle, and he began to sell the contracts in his hands in batches. At the position of $16,000, trading was relatively active, and the contract was completed quickly. Maybe even part of it was taken away by Qingtian Capital. Li Yuan called Qingtian Capital. Stop going long and wait for my news. As the transaction continued, Li Yuan felt that the situation was really going to change. Perhaps the position of $19,000 in the previous life will not be reached this time. The other party must have been aware of the billions of dollars that suddenly entered the market yesterday. And this time is different from last time. The last time Li Yuan entered the market, even if the opponent noticed it, they had to pull up. After all, they had already achieved that step. It's different now. With funds coming in to take over, they can completely run away without having to pull up too much. As Qingtian Capital did not open long positions, Li Yuan slowly sold, and the entire price stagnated. It used to rise by more than 10 or 20 points every day, but now it suddenly goes sideways. Something is wrong. Representative funding disagreements have arisen. You are so humming worthless that you don't dare to cash in on such a small increase? Then I'll add fuel to your fire. He took a look at his holdings and found that even though he had sold some in the past half hour, The contract value was still over $8 billion US. He changed his previous attitude of making small purchases and directly spent hundreds of millions of dollars. Must pull. Otherwise, the market will be smashed today. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 214. Generally in stocks, there is a saying that the main wave rises. But in fact, in most of the main rising wave stages, ordinary people will not have the opportunity to participate. And when you, an ordinary person, can buy it, you should consider whether you should take over. In the so-called main rising stage, the dealer only looks at the chips. As long as after analysis, he can run away and make a certain profit, and he can retreat anytime and anywhere. Distributing chips is not to let others make money, but to make it easier for you to leave the market. The previous sideways trading made it clear that chips were being distributed. So Li Yuan must be smashed. Bitcoin's daily transaction volume has recently increased from more than 10 billion to nearly 20 billion US, which seems to be a lot. But on an average of 24 hours, chip transactions in a short period of time are not particularly exaggerated. This is also the reason why Li Yuan asked his traders to take their time. If they enter the game too quickly, it will be particularly obvious. Originally, with their help, prices should have risen faster. He asked Qingtian Capital to stop and found that the price had not changed at all. The other party senses that large funds are entering the market, and the hot market has brought a large amount of scattered funds, so they want to wrap up their large chips and sneak away in the chaotic market. Judging by time, if you sneak away while you are sleeping, the funds are definitely not from the east. Li Yuan understood. Start from this moment. He smashed the plate and ate at the same time. After spending hundreds of millions of dollars, even if there were tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people involved in the transaction, they would be confused for a while. And after the contract was sold short, Li Yuan immediately followed up with the second contract. The purpose is just one: smash it. In just half an hour, he sold more than $1 billion worth of contracts and directly dropped the price of Bitcoin by more than a dozen points. Coupled with the panic chips he led, the situation was heading toward collapse. The most important point is that he smashed it like this, giving the short seller too much room for imagination. After all, Bitcoin itself is just a symbol. The recent surge has made many short sellers ready to make moves, but they are too timid to go deeper. Everyone knows the meaning of short orders. Those who dare to open short orders without hesitation in this world must either have absolute confidence or be a novice. For short sellers, a building was built in a very short period of time, and they do not believe that the foundation is deep enough. Nor do they believe there is no bubble inside. Li Yuan is actually not afraid of collapse. Because even if the value of the chips in his hand returns to zero, he still makes money. More than $1 billion have been cashed out in the past half hour. Qingtian Capital is not afraid. If the value returns to zero, the maximum loss will be $1.5 billion US. After all, they have only dumped more than $1 billion US in funds. Under the pressure of short orders, prices fell further. From an initial increase of more than 10 points, it has now fallen by 6 or 7 points, and this is just the beginning. Another half hour passed, and we had already fallen to 13 points underwater. Although there have been transactions, there is no sign that any funds are willing to enter the market to increase the price. On the national funds side, I was a little worried early in the morning, so I took a look at Li Yuan's account status. When I saw the result, I was dumbfounded. Why is the account so outrageous? All contracts held are losing money. As they looked at it, their hearts dropped. Although they could not see everything clearly due to the complexity of the data, it was clear that they had suffered a huge loss. With leverage, I lost more than 20 points. Inside and out, I was already losing almost 50 points. The principal of us $1.5 billion is equivalent to a loss of us $700 million. He immediately called Yao Yingsong. Yao Yingsong, are you finished with your work there? Boss, I'm not done yet. I have to talk to Mindray Medical today. Everything goes well. I won't be able to go back until Tuesday at the earliest. Forget it, there's nothing you can do if you go back anyway, so be it. After you go back, take charge of the third period of work. Phase 3. Leader, hasn't Phase 2 just begun? We were already losing everything from the beginning. He called Yao Yingsong mainly to remind Yao Yingsong to be mentally prepared. He knew very well that Yao Yingsong must be grateful to Li Yuan and might not be ruthless when negotiating interests in the future. But this time Li Yuan lost. It is Li Yuan who wants the big national fund to follow his ideas, so there will inevitably be a collision between them. They bowed their heads, but they didn't pretend that nothing had happened. If Li Yuan loses this time, they will definitely get more benefits back. Li Yuan originally had 30% of the fund's share, but after losing, only 10% would be retained for him at most. Yao Yingsong needs to talk about these, they are not suitable. When Yao Yingsong heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He didn't know Li Yuan's current trading results, but his leader would definitely not joke about it. He also knew what the leader was implying. The implication is that the leader is worried that he and Li Yuan are too close, which is not a good sign in the workplace. Leader, at any time, I am a member of the National Fund. Please rest assured that I will not refuse what is my duty. He had to express his position. Even though he was grateful to Li Yuan, he also knew his identity. If his position changes due to external events, then his life will be over. No matter how good you are, you cannot take on important responsibilities. Well, I'm relieved about this. Just go about your business slowly and remember to complete the second phase of the process as soon as possible after you go back. Good. Soon, he hung up the phone. The leader of the big national fund shook his head. In fact, he didn't want to bear the loss of $1.5 billion. But it did happen. In fact, the country has always been very strict about risk control, but many people seem to be dissatisfied and feel that it is blocking their way to make money. For example, in A shares, no one listens to risk warnings for stocks that have been trading at daily limits. This is all the data that the village chief saw when he opened the back door, and finally gave a reminder. If everyone doesn't listen, what can be done? Yes, stock prices will still rise after some risks are warned. But is that a normal rise? It's just that there aren't enough leaks and people don't want to cut them. If retail investors can sell all the money as soon as they receive the prompt and then no longer enter the market, can they still be defrauded out of money? There is also virtual currency. The situation inside is 10,000 times more complicated than the stock market. No one dares to say that they can make money in it. Not to mention that once it is liberalized, a large number of fraud platforms will breed, and most people will not be able to tell what a fraud platform is. In fact, a lot of things have been done, but the effect is very limited. You can't just accuse someone of manipulating the stock market without evidence, right? A shares are not very attractive to investors in the first place. If they continue to speculate on rumors, people will be panicked and they will have to close their doors as soon as possible. He felt that Li Yuan was really going to fall into trouble this time. I just hope that Li Yuan's confidence will not be damaged this time, because the cooperation between the two parties will continue. The data that Li Yuan trades in the stock market are reviewed by professionals behind the scenes. It would be difficult for a group of experts to copy it with hindsight, and Li Yuan is not a flash in the pan. From Qingtian Mixed Small and Medium Caps to Qingtian Global Selected Mix, it has proven its strength. He couldn't help but take another look at the data, and then, his expression turned ugly. Forget it, I won't watch it anymore. Bitcoin has dropped 30 points. The overall loss was at least 70%, which was almost equivalent to the annihilation of the entire army. He didn't know how much position Li Yuan held, and thought that Li Yuan entered the full position with twice the leverage. After all, it is their own money, these 10 billion are theirs. Last time Li Yuan made more than 20 billion, less than half of it has been paid out. Anyway, next time, it's our turn to take the lead and we won't let him play with this kind of thing again. Facts have proved that even Li Yuan cannot play with Bitcoin. Banning it domestically is the absolutely right choice. Otherwise, I don't know how many people will go bankrupt. He has already thought about taking this incident as a typical subject to warn the people below. Li Yuan waited for 2 hours and found that there was still no movement. Such a violent smash, but the banker inside was indifferent, which was different from the past. He didn't want to take it anymore, because if Qingtian Capital continued to use the money, there was a risk of liquidation. After all, the leverage is doubled. Now he is not afraid of being liquidated. At most, he will lose everything, because he has only invested $1 billion in total and has not invested all the money. From 16,000 to 10,000, those people could still hold back. If they don't take action, Li Yuan won't be able to analyze the situation. After all, he only had so little money in hand, so he could only follow the overall situation. By smashing the market before, on the one hand, I recovered part of my cash, and on the other hand, I also prevented the other party from running away so smoothly. It works, but it's not strong. Even Qingtian Capital was involved. He was ready for a big fight today, but the other party didn't make any move. He didn't believe that the other party would fall asleep at this time after using so much money. You have to keep your eyes open even when you fall asleep, right? Li Yuan thinks that he is not particularly greedy for money among those who play finance. Because he makes money now not to spend it, but to build some paths for himself. For him, if he can earn money, he can earn it, and if he can't, it doesn't matter. Even if you lose money, it is not something that cannot be faced. But the vast majority of people who play in finance are money hungry. Those people who have invested at least 20 to 30 billion US dollars can sleep peacefully. Even if he beat Li Yuan to death, he wouldn't believe it. He was sure that those people must be staring at the disk. There are only two possibilities for why he didn't take action. Either he is waiting for the situation to be more controllable, or he is holding back the bad news. Li Yuan thinks it's the latter. Because they already have a high degree of control over the market, they control at least 60% of the Bitcoin chips circulating in the market. Otherwise, how could they dare to cause such a big thing? Precisely because they have very strong control over the market, as long as they increase the price, even if 1/3 of the goods are shipped in the end, they can still make back their money. The subsequent chips are pure profits and can also be used for secondary trading. Since they have a high degree of control over the market, there is no need to wait for the situation to be controllable, because they have not stolen much money at all, and the situation is always under control for them. There were two paths before him now. The first is to stand still and wait for the opponent to take action. But that would be too cowardly. And if you don't participate all the time, it's difficult to accurately grasp the market conditions inside. It's like just reading books and not doing questions all day, and you are likely to make mistakes in the final exam. The second is to use the remaining money of Qingtian Capital to open short orders with leverage to hedge against your own long orders. Judging from the current situation, if the price continues to fall, short orders will earn more than long orders will lose, so the position will never be liquidated and the capital can be recovered slowly. If it goes up, short orders will definitely pay more, but if it goes up, there is still room for other operations. This method does not seem to make much sense. It is a way to protect costs. It will definitely not make any money overall, and in the end at least 1/3 of the principal will be lost. Of course, What Li Yuan wants is definitely not to protect costs, but to make some changes on the market and create opportunities for himself. Li Yuan didn't know what big move the other party was holding back, but he knew that the other party was definitely trying to make money and make more money. The current price of us $10,000 apiece is not enough to support them in making money. How else can they make money? The answer is obvious: empty order. From the time Li Yuan started selling, to now, many short orders have emerged on the market. Li Yuan couldn't figure out the detailed data, but based on the trading volume in the past few hours, it should be more than $1 billion. Qingtian Capital holds multiple contracts, which are essentially consistent with the interests of the banker. And judging from his participation in it in the past 2 weeks, the other party does not reject the existence of long orders and can help them stabilize their chips. As for making money, it doesn't matter. No matter how much money you make, it's still nothing compared to them. They are just waiting for enough short orders to accumulate in the market, and then eat them up in one go. In this way, subsequent short orders will become their biggest source of profits. Without short orders as a bottom, the market will collapse at any time. They only need to blow up the short order, and no matter what the price of the chips is, the other party has to pay for it. Li Yuan glanced at Chen Ji's account. I have to say that this two-pronged approach feels really good. If you put it in the stock market and properly manipulate the stock market, you will be caught directly. He couldn't even imagine how Shen Tianfu and his group lost in the first place. How can we still lose despite taking advantage of the right time and place? He colluded with various violations in private, and couldn't even beat him, who couldn't hold more than 5% of his position. This time, there is indeed pressure to deal with the bookmakers in Bitcoin. The other party had no impulsive funds at all and made every step very solidly. But he has 2 accounts. Even theoretically, he has a capital of $6 billion. He's so scared. Even if the other party has a capital of $30 billion, it is not much different from him. So, he directly took out the money he had just cashed out and opened short orders one by one. Anyway, just push it out slowly. A single transaction is $100 million. In this way, within an hour, he sold $1 billion in short orders. Doesn't the banker just want a short order? Just give it to them. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 215. The dealer here is different from all the main players Li Yuan has encountered before. They started the game steadily, not being swayed by the situation and sticking to their own strategy. Otherwise, it would be impossible for there to be no movement at all until now. You know, what Li Yuan created was not only $1 billion short order, but also the confidence of the entire short position. He led more short-selling funds to join. After all, even if the price of Bitcoin is only $9,000, it is still a very high number. With such high attention, more than a few million people around the world follow it every day, maybe even tens of millions. Even if it's less, 500,000 people participating in the transaction is still a huge amount of money. At present, Bitcoin has not been split yet, and can only be traded one by one. At most, the funds are leveraged, and many platforms will allocate them. And no matter when, there are shadows of those platforms behind Bitcoin. The short order continues to decline. At around 8 o'clock in the evening, Li Yuan called the traders and asked them to continue opening contracts and strive to invest all the remaining funds at the position of $8,000. The initial cost of more than $1 billion was more than $14,000, and it has already lost nearly half of it, a loss of $6.7 billion. Now continue to open contracts. If calculated based on the price of $9,000, then when the price of Bitcoin drops to almost $6,000, all long contracts will be liquidated. This path must be taken because there is no point in going short, especially at this level. If you want to make money, you can only go long, and you have to do it before the dealer takes action. When the dealer takes action, he has no chance. The whole thing is just like fishing. Someone has made a nest, the fish is in good condition, and he wants to take advantage of it. But if people don't give in, they are not worried about the fish being caught away, but they are worried that their nest has expired. So Li Yuan could only throw a handful of bait into other people's nests, and then it was up to him to see if they would let him fish there. He had some food at noon but nothing at night. Either drink some water or eat 2 cookies. He cannot eat enough, and his reaction will be sluggish after eating. The same is true for traders. Around 8 p.m., the acceptance of short orders gradually became stronger, although the price did not rise much. However, it can be seen from the trading volume that the funds for short orders are more than expected. At 10 o'clock, the price of Bitcoin suddenly rose a lot, from about $9,000 to $10,600. The whole market suddenly became violent. Because many short orders were liquidated at this position. Those who are able to make a margin call are fine, but those who are unable to make a margin call are forced to buy, and then the price goes out of control. At this time, it is almost impossible to buy chips at the market price, because it is refreshing every second, and there are too many people liquidating their positions, and the price is quickly raised to $11,000, $11,500. Those who are unable to make a margin call will still have to make up the difference to the platform even if their positions are liquidated. For example, if 6 times the leverage is used for $100,000 and a short order is opened at a price of $10,000, then $11,660 is the liquidation line. When the position is liquidated, a forced purchase will be made immediately, but in just a few tenths of a second, the price skyrockets to $13,330. Not only is the principal of $100,000 lost, but the platform is also owed $100,000. It's actually not that exaggerated, but the price difference must definitely be made up. Don't want to make up for it? The platform will naturally recognize you. This situation was a little beyond Li Yuan's expectations. He originally thought that the other party would quickly raise the price to $17,000 to $8,000 and liquidate all the short orders directly. It would be much faster to cut the price that way. Now it is clear that those short orders are given the opportunity to run away. For most of them, their positions will not be liquidated and they can leave the market safely by cutting some meat. The most important thing is that he is already a little sleepy and hungry, and wants to get off work early. In this situation, I can't get off work. In this way, I slowly stayed up until 12 o'clock at night. He never hung up on the phone with the trader, and he could only use WeChat on the PC to reply to messages. The price held steady at $13,000. Qingtian Capital has already made a profit. After all, their cost is only $11,000. Li Yuan's side must have lost money, especially the $1 billion short order, which has already lost $300 million. But it's okay, you can't liquidate your position until you have $20,000. And if the price can reach $20,000, the value of the long orders he holds here can also reach $10 billion, and the overall situation will definitely not be a loss. If the position is liquidated, the position will be liquidated. He couldn't help it and ordered a takeaway. However, before eating takeout, he wrote a document and wrote down his next operating instructions, just because he was afraid that he would not be able to react or not think thoroughly enough. After eating a full meal, I felt much better. Then, the drowsiness came. Fortunately, I had tea at home, so I made some tea, left the sofa, and changed to a hard bench. It's okay that the trader's shift has changed, so I don't need to worry about it. There was nothing to do for the time being, so the trader started chatting with Li Yuan. "Boss, why don't you go take a rest first? We can just keep an eye on this, and you can give us some instructions. It's okay, it's okay. This position is more critical. Just wait. Then boss, what price do you think Bitcoin can reach? No one can say for sure. The situation has completely changed. Li Yuan feels that the price of $20,000 is definitely no problem, but the subsequent increase will be very limited. In a few years, the price will rise to $40,000 to $50,000. This is because too much capital has participated, there is a lot of money, and the global flood has created this position. Now, $20,000 is almost the limit. There are a total of 21 million bitcoins, and 13 million have been issued so far. No one knows how many dead links there are. Maybe those dead links have been cracked long ago, or even quietly entered circulation. Anyway, the daily circulation is so large that no one can figure it out. Calculated based on the total circulation, the unit price of $20,000 means that the market value of Bitcoin is $260 billion. Even for a stock with a market capitalization of $260 billion, the funds in it will not be less than $60 billion. For Bitcoin, which has a particularly large amplitude, the internal trading funds should be no less than $100 billion. Otherwise, where would the daily trading volume of $20 billion come from? In all aspects, big capital has not yet entered the game. It is impossible for them to push it to $30,000. The amount of funds that need to be used is too large. The price of Bitcoin has risen to $14,000. Traders are starting to talk about this year's bonuses. Although they know that they don't play much role, they just do some hard work. But Li Yuan earns so much, so it's normal for him to give them some, right? They are not greedy either. If each of them can get more than 100,000 yuan, they will be quite satisfied. Anyway, in other companies, they have no chance to get bonuses, and those companies themselves are still losing money. Li Yuan has already started planning bonuses, especially Guo Meng's bonus, which must not be less. She is the person with the greatest pressure in the entire company. And if she can withstand the pressure this time, it should be no problem next time. It will be of great use to him. If you search the entire market for this kind of experience in resisting pressure, you probably won't be able to find another one. If he misses this village, Guo Meng will not wait for him at the next store, so the grievance award must be given in full. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the price of Bitcoin exceeded $15,000. Almost as high as yesterday. Li Yuan took a look at the instructions he had prepared and found that there was no deviation, and it was similar to what he was thinking at this time. Anyway, as long as the price reaches $20,000, he will start to reduce his position. Make long orders first, then short orders. If you cooperate, you can earn a few more points. You just can't let your billion-dollar short position blow up. It's just that he still doesn't understand why the dealer is so slow. Pulling up bit by bit is to give those short orders a chance to run away. If this continues, they may not be able to reach the price of $20,000. Li Yuan didn't think there was something wrong with his thinking. The situation was contrary to his thinking, which meant that there was something behind it that he hadn't noticed. Is there a possibility that this does not actually make the short order run away? The thinking in Bitcoin is extremely complex, and it is impossible for him to grasp it accurately. It is just a deduction simulation. The main thing is to keep an eye on the dealer's actions. At around 4 a.m., the price of Bitcoin exceeded $16,000. Ahem. Li Yuan was really sleepy, so he lit a cigarette. Then I choked to death. But there is also an advantage, the whole person was sobered up immediately. In addition, the stomach has finished digesting, and the blood supply to the whole body has returned to the brain. Thinking back to some of his previous thoughts, he felt something was getting more and more wrong. $16,000, no doubt a lucrative position. Qingtian Capital earned 45 points. Because of the leverage, it is equivalent to earning 90 points on the principal. At the beginning, he just wanted to buy a band, as long as he had 20 or 30 points, and then he would do more in it. Anyway, Bitcoin fluctuates enough, so if he controls his position and stays focused, it shouldn't be a problem. Just entering the market broke the balance and was noticed by the funds inside. Even though I have made a lot of money now, in fact it is not necessarily better than my previous plan. Before, he was sure that he would be able to liquidate $10 billion within a month, but now, it is estimated to be a one-time transaction. Even if it continues to fall, he does not dare to go short on a large scale. It is too dangerous to open large short orders. The reason why he felt something was wrong was that he was too stable. Both the banker and other participants are surprisingly stable. And his previous guess lingered in his mind, becoming increasingly clear. So he opened his account, used funds, and repaid the $50 million short contract. After all, it is too dangerous to keep too many short orders in your hands. Even if you lose some money, you should pay it off first. It was this $50 million that seemed to knock over a domino, instantly creating a stormy wave on the market. He himself never thought it would be so outrageous. Originally, $50 million was not a particularly large amount. In the current market situation, no one would even notice. Before his short contract was completed, the price of Bitcoin suddenly rose to $17,000. Compared with the usual increase of 20 to 30 points, it is not an exaggeration at present. After all, it is just backfilling yesterday's gap. But it's only just begun. Li Yuan seized the time and continued to sell a large number of short orders. At this time, he himself turned into a bull, frantically sweeping up the chips on the market. In addition, the dealer was also eating chips, and the price soared. Until the price of Bitcoin climbed to the level of $20,000, Li Yuan did not spend much money. He spent all his money and went out to trade a contract of less than $300 million. The liquidation line has moved up a bit. What was originally a liquidation of $20,000 has now become a liquidation of $20,600. Compared with yesterday, Bitcoin has risen by 40 points today. If you add in gap filling, it will be even more. Just because the statistical time is different, the existence of the time difference is not displayed on the disk. Many gaps have been eaten away by time. Otherwise, today's figure would have doubled. Li Yuan stopped sleeping because he had to sell his long orders and add margin to his short orders. Then on this basis, try to repay the short orders as much as possible and reduce the losses caused by the short orders. He already knew the dealer's intentions. Long orders don't matter to them, short orders are the data they value most. Judging from the disk, the trading volume is not particularly outrageous, which shows that the number of short orders has been increasing. If short orders are decreasing, trading volume will inevitably increase as the price increases. After all, more and more positions are being liquidated. There's no way that the $6 billion in transactions in the past few hours didn't involve bookmakers, right? If there is no guidance from the banker, what is wrong with those short sellers? Will it be so? Since the dealer is involved, the trading volume must be superimposed. He shouldn't have eaten that meal. After eating, the brain will become sluggish and the blood supply to the brain will be insufficient. Although there is no physical discomfort, the brain is subconsciously lazy. For example, professional players who play games basically play games on an empty stomach. There are many professions where you can't have enough to eat. Fight for reaction, fight for skills. Even table tennis players have to eat 3 hours in advance before the game. Some subtle problems have been ignored by myself, otherwise they can be discovered in advance and save a lot of money. Now it is almost impossible to repay the short orders in my hand. I can only let the price rise and keep adding margin. The number of short orders on the market is absolutely staggering. The dealer deliberately raised the price slowly and did not blow it up directly for everyone. The purpose was just to let more funds participate in short selling. After all, some people dared to go short for only $10,000. Now it's $14,000 or $15,000. Why don't they dare to follow up? Bitcoin cannot have such a high value. Only fools go long. Therefore, the actual situation is that as Bitcoin rises, short orders not only do not decrease, but increase in number. Just like GameStop a few years later. It's just, the identities have been swapped. At this time, the bankers are doing long and retail investors are short. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 216. It was true that Li Yuan reacted slowly, and he recognized the loss. Although the overall profit is definitely more, his previous analysis was more than half wrong, which is a complete lesson for him. It can be seen from this incident that the dealer has a very clear grasp of the short chips. They knew how many short orders there were, otherwise they would not have instantly increased the price after Li Yuan repaid 50 million. Just like a precision machine, only when the precision is achieved can you understand some subtle changes. If the data they have is not clear enough, they may not even notice it, let alone $50 million, even $500 million. Being able to master such accurate data, you wouldn't believe it if they said they didn't open a backdoor. Li Yuan's platform is owned by Morgan. In other words, the opponent even has a backdoor for Morgan. There is no such thing as a relative, but in fact, he is a thief in the family. The identity of the banker inside has been made clear, and it should be these big capitals that are controlling it. I guess there is no annual customs fee. The global financial market is average this year. As New Year's Day approaches, they need better financial reports to attract funds to survive next year. After all, judging from the current situation, next year will be even more difficult. They were probably the ones who raised the price of Bitcoin to $20,000 in a previous life. Li Yuan originally wanted to clear out his contract for about $20,000. But now, there is no way to clear it. After all, the empty order in his hand is still a reminder, and he must ensure that he has multiple orders in his hand for hedging. This time he was not qualified to be greedy. Since he had already boarded the car, he would honestly take the profits in his hands. Anyway, he must have made money, and because he chose the right direction, he made a lot of money. Slowly settle the short contract, and then you can withdraw it. If the short order is not repaid in one day, the position will not be reduced. He wanted to see how high these people could raise the price. You didn't rush back until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. After all, he had to sign a contract with Ningco, Limited in the morning. He came back as fast as he could and almost didn't catch the plane. He knew that the company had opened its second phase, and he also knew that Yao Yingsong was not here. Li Yuan was very busy over there, and he felt very strange. Whenever I send a message to Li Yuan, he will reply quickly. He wanted to call to report work, but Li Yuan said the phone was busy and asked him to send a message directly if he had anything to do. So he asked the trader and got a result that shocked him. Li Yuan has not rested for more than 30 hours. Traders can change shifts, but Li Yuan cannot. This is the disadvantage of Qingtian Capital. Li Yuan is the only real decision maker. On the one hand, the reason is that Qingtian Capital does not have much business and cannot recruit real talents. On the other hand, Li Yuan is too strong. Even if he invites those hundreds of billions of fund managers, he will be dimmed in front of Li Yuan. There is no need for each other. The platform of Qingtian Capital belongs to Li Yuan, and Li Yuan only needs tool people. But something happened now, and Li Yuan was too tired to be alone. The disadvantage arises, if you want to find someone to help you, you can't find one. He hurried back in a hurry, without even returning home, and came to the company first. The company currently has only 2 trading rooms, which are separated by a long distance so that both parties do not disturb each other. When he came to Qingtian Global Select Mixing, he saw the door of the trading room open, and the trader's voice could be clearly heard inside. "What's going on? The boss is not in the company, so you don't even follow the most basic rules, right?" He came over and asked first. "There's a lot of surveillance around here, and that surveillance is subject to scrutiny. Once the company is implicated, all these traders combined will not be able to afford the loss." A trader said, "Mr. Yu, the door is closed. There is no signal inside. What kind of signal does the trading room need? Isn't it enough to have an internet connection? But we have to stay on the phone with the boss." When Yu walked in, he saw that a mobile phone screen was still on, and the call time displayed on it was already 30 hours. When he saw that the trader was not particularly busy, he quietly called out a guy and asked, "What's going on? How can the boss, a man who pays attention to rules, arrange to do this? This time is special. The boss entered a market that is traded 24 hours a day. The situation has changed too much, and the boss has always insisted on keeping an eye on the market. Boss, has it really been more than 30 hours without a break? Well, basically every hour, the boss will give us some instructions. Then, okay. I'll go and turn off the surveillance camera. Mr. Yu, the boss has turned off the surveillance camera." Yu. "Come to think of it, my boss wouldn't leave such obvious evidence." Okay, I'll go in and have a word with the boss." Yu probably already knew that he couldn't help at all with this kind of work, not even playing the role of a trader. At any rate, a trader can still endure hunger for 7 or 8 hours. In addition to sleeping, he starts to get hungry within 4 hours. 6 or 7 hours is already the limit. When he came to the trading room, he shouted into his mobile phone, "Is the boss here?" "I'm Yu." Li Yuan's feeble voice came from inside, "What's wrong?" "That's it? Boss, do you need anything? I'll send it to you. What do you want to eat?" "No need, just take care of the company's affairs. I still have something to do here." "Okay, I'll leave now." "Boss, you must take care of yourself. The company cannot do without you." After Yu finished speaking, he left the trading room. "I originally wanted to see if other places could help, but it didn't work out." He became a complete spectator in this matter. He really wanted to help. After all, what Li Yuan needed most when he was tired was someone who could help him. He would definitely take credit for his contribution in the future. He has worked in many companies. He is not the most relaxed at Qingtian Capital, but he is definitely the happiest. Even being a dog makes me happy. In other places, if you act like a dog, others will really think you are a dog. At Qingtian Capital, his boss has never let him down. Every time he works hard, he will be rewarded. Although the salary has not increased by a penny, the personal dignity is full of enjoyment. This is his dream job. Now Li Yuan rejected his words without hesitation, which showed that Li Yuan really didn't need it. He had some other thoughts, but he had to give them up. At the same time, Li Yuan was giving instructions. At the position of $25,000, use 10 times the leverage and continue to advance. Li Yuan asked Qingtian Capital to sell part of the contract. After getting the money, he directly increased the leverage and reopened the contract. Because the price rise today is so crazy. Around 10 noon, there was a certain degree of decline. Until 12 noon, the price of Bitcoin was only $19,000. Li Yuan took the opportunity to let them issue a batch of contracts, but because the undertaking was too strong, the total contract was only about $500 million. He knows what the bookmaker is doing inside. Because it's almost 12 o'clock, and it happens to be a new day on the other side of the Atlantic. Looking at yesterday, it only increased by 30 points. If the price remains at $22,000, it will be more than 50 points. There is a big gap between the two. The former will make some headlines, and the latter will make headlines around the world. In this position, they don't dare to attract the attention of the world. The current funds are enough to play. Otherwise, if other big funds rush in to do short selling, everyone should stop playing and start over. Li Yuan's short orders have all been cleared, and he lost us $1.1 billion on this contract. After 12 o'clock, the price of Bitcoin immediately shot up, reaching $25,000 in less than 3 hours. They played too hard this time, and it was most likely due to their own participation that their profits did not meet expectations, so they could only squeeze those short orders even more crazily. From this you can see the courage of the other party. In the previous few trades, I entered the market to grab profits, but the other party refused to give me any, and then. It can only be said that the current banker structure is high. They know that Li Yuan's interests are consistent with theirs, and both parties are considered partners. If we target Li Yuan's long orders, how can we target them? There is no other choice but to smash the plate. Let's not talk about smashing it ourselves. After smashing it, what should we do if the chips are snatched away by others? It's a hard-fought plan. If you give up a piece of meat just because of a mouthful of soup, no one will do it. At this point, Li Yuan also knew that he was destined to mess around, so he just had to be careful not to be tricked. Moreover, there are more short orders on the market than he imagined. Starting from $19,000 and ending at $25,000, he has put $4 billion into it with 10 times leverage, just to see the banker behind it. How long can I endure it? Once he knows the other party's psychological bottom line, it will be easier for him to operate. After all, if you run away now, you will definitely regret it. It's clear that I'm going to hit $30,000. He can't hold on any longer. In 10 hours at most, he will find a way to clear the warehouse no matter what. He asked Qingtian Capital to put in the last bit of money in order to force a high point. He has not touched the contract for Chenji's account because it is not important. At 6 p.m. on Monday, Bitcoin reached a high of $27,000. Li Yuan no longer wanted to play with them, he felt something was getting more and more wrong. Obviously all the accounts are making crazy profits, but the profits come out of nowhere. Let's talk about it now. At this position, he would be able to accept it even if it subsequently rose to $30,000. After all, the dealer has gone completely crazy. Start to evacuate. All will be evacuated within 6 hours. Li Yuan also began to withdraw. The initial $300 million, 10 times leverage, cost us $6,000. It has now risen to $27,000. Although I lost $1.1 billion due to a short sale midway, it is really nothing compared to the overall situation. The current contract value is $11.6 billion. If all can be sold at this position, the net profit will be approximately $9 billion. In comparison, the contract value of Qingtian Capital is higher. Subsequently, they invested 10 times the leverage. Most of them were invested just after 12 o'clock. The total contract value was about $16 billion. However, excluding the leveraged capital of $6 billion, there is only $10 billion. From 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, Li Yuan moved slowly. He was also worried about affecting the operations of Qingtian Capital, so he sold a contract worth almost $1 billion. The most important point is that he can clearly see that more than $5 billion have been traded in the past 2 hours, and the price has not come down. Even if there are liquidated funds scrambling for chips, it is not so crazy. It shows that the banker has a tough attitude towards taking over and has a lot of money in hand. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the phone. "Boss, our contract can't be concluded." Li Yuan suddenly lost all sleep and said, "What do you mean? We have only sold us $2 billion. No matter how we operate in the future, the contract cannot be sold, even if the price is reduced to us $26,000, it will be useless. Did you unplug our network cable?" "Should be." Li Yuan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Only $2 billion came out. In other words, the other party knew his capital very well, and the extra $500 million was regarded as his hard work. As for those contracts, you can't sell them now, and you won't be able to sell them next. Unless they finish eating up the profits inside. It might be worth a little money by then, but who knows when. Leveraged funds have a cost. 4.5 billion leveraged funds means a cost of $450 million a year. Once the price of Bitcoin drops to $2,000 to $3,000, after removing the handling fees, at most $500 million will be left. Li Yuan has no doubt that Bitcoin will fall to $2,000 to $3,000 this time. After all, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. In my previous life, it was as high as $20,000, but next year it will drop to more than $3,000. Now that you are overdrafting so much in advance, your bottom line will definitely be lowered. Wait for my news. After Li Yuan finished speaking, he began to throw away the contract in his hand. He wanted to see what was going on. Qingtian Capital has shut down, and it is estimated that it will not be spared either. Perhaps after selling $2 billion, the program setting will be triggered. No wonder they are so crazy, they have already prepared tricks to cheat. Especially since they knew that a big account like themselves was coming in by opening the back door, they probably programmed themselves right away. No matter how high the leverage you get later, you can only lift the sedan chair for them, because the money you can get is only so little. He spent billions before, but the price didn't come down. Even if Li Yuan spent more crazily, the other party could still take it. But Li Yuan felt something was wrong. He has already paid out $2 billion, and there are no problems. He was out for a while. After he sold $3 billion, he frowned. No problem yet. Why did something happen to Qingtian Capital? He called the driver. It was close to 10 o'clock and we arrived at the company. He fell asleep on the way, but when he arrived at the garage, the driver woke him up. After shaking his limbs and feeling a little more energetic, he stepped onto the elevator. There are only a few traders in the office, and others have already left work. After going to the trading room, he verified it himself. Faced with a price of $28,000, it was really. You guys just stay here, and if nothing happens, try to see if there is a way around it. Anyway, as long as you have a chance to leave, you will withdraw the funds. Li Yuan felt that it was not a problem of funds, but simply an issue of accounts. Maybe the other party couldn't lock Chenji's account. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 217. After Li Yuan returned home, he set several alarm clocks for himself and woke up every 2 hours. He tried to get a good sleep and then verify the account problem. The current situation is not a loss. Price changes do not have a particularly big impact on him. I am too tired now and my mind is a little confused. I will try again after I wake up. His judgment on the market is just his personal way of thinking. Although you are sure, just like Schrödinger's cat, you will never know whether what you are thinking is right or wrong unless the other party actively decrypts it. Even if feedback is provided through results, it may not be accurate. Being extremely exhausted, I woke up every 2 hours, which was very torturous. And every time he wakes up, he has to take a look at the market and make a call to the trading room. The answer I got was basically the same every time, and there was no way to operate it. Similarly, the price of Bitcoin is also rising. At 2 o'clock in the morning, it exceeded $29,000. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Li Yuan woke up and found that the amount had reached $31,000. 6 o'clock in the morning, $31,500. At this time, Yao Yingsong rushed back dusty. He didn't sleep all night. He just negotiated a cooperation with Mindray Pharmaceuticals last night, and then worked overtime until 8 o'clock in the evening. Immediately afterwards, when he explained the situation to Yu, he realized that Li Yuan had been busy for 40 or 50 hours in a row. He didn't dare to delay. Without a ticket, he took a taxi and rushed back overnight. He rested in the car for 3 or 4 hours, but when he arrived at the company, he found that Yu was still awake at the company. With 2 big black circles under his eyes, the office was smoky. After he entered, he said, "Mr. Yu, why don't you go back and rest first? I'll take your place here for a while." Yu took a puff of smoke, shook his head and said, "Wait for another 2 hours. The boss will call us in 2 hours. I also asked the trader. The boss said that it will be almost over at 12 noon. By that time, no matter what, let the boss rest. Then I'll stay with you for a while." Yao Yingsong found a seat and sat down. Yu looked a little tired and said, "Manager Yao, this matter is the boss's decision. I shouldn't have said anything originally. But I have always been reluctant to say something. In this matter, our boss has done nothing wrong. Right? From the initial cooperation, it took a month to liquidate. Your big national fund has repeatedly put pressure on the boss. When did you consider our boss's ideas?" Yao Yingsong remained silent. From Yu's point of view, there is nothing wrong with what he said. Yesheng came over because he was impatient and arrogant, causing a lot of trouble for the company. And this was originally the mistake of the big national fund. Yu continued, "What's wrong with my boss having a temper? Shouldn't he have a temper? He doesn't want to take over the second phase, so of course he has his own considerations. Let me put it bluntly, does your leader have the ability of my boss? What if you have that ability, how about coming to cooperate with us? Cooperation should look like cooperation. My boss is young and has no background, but it will only happen sooner or later. In this world, sooner or later my boss will have the say. What you did you treat our boss as a human being? If you want to change someone, change someone. If you do something wrong, pat your butt and leave. Indeed, I recently asked you to do something, and you did it very beautifully. Most people may not be able to do it well. But so what? You don't have to do it. When did I force you? Feelings, my boss helping you earn tens of billions is not considered credit. You can do whatever you want in love, but you have to go to my boss to negotiate terms." Although the boss didn't say anything, it could be seen from his actions that he was very anxious and wanted to liquidate the second phase as soon as possible. The Chinese New Year is coming soon, and my boss has privately told me to prepare a year-end bonus for the company, as well as an additional gift from the company. The boss had no intention of opening the second phase a year ago, but suddenly he opened it in a hurry. What is the reason? If it weren't for the pressure from your leaders, would your boss agree? Let me put it more harshly, the boss is because of you, Yao Yingsong. The boss doesn't want to make it difficult for you, and wants to give you enough respect, so he agreed. The boss always attaches great importance to employees who can do practical things. Manager Guo Menqiu first joined the company with me. Since she took office, she has not made a penny for the company. But her attitude was serious, and her boss asked me to take care of her negative emotions. Not only did she ask the company app to ban comments, but she also asked me to prepare a grievance award for her. Now that I see my boss like this, I feel uncomfortable. The boss is less than 20 years old and already has a net worth of more than 20 billion. How can he risk his own body? He can completely enjoy life in extreme luxury, and there are only a handful of things in the world that he can't do. When you said this, he stopped. There was much more he could say, but it was no longer necessary. If Yao Yingsong still doesn't understand, no matter how much he talks, it will be in vain. Yao Yingsong knew more about Li Yuan and the National Fund. As you guessed, Li Yuan wanted to liquidate the second phase as soon as possible and then have a holiday for the new year. It's just that he didn't expect Li Yuan to work so hard. If I haven't taken a break yet, I have been working continuously for more than 40 hours. Even though Li Yuan was still very young, this would cause serious damage to his body, and he would have to rest for at least 10 days and a half to recover. Yu's words were a blow to him. He can have a stand, but he cannot ignore the opportunities provided to him by Qingtian Capital. And he was asked to strive for more benefits for Qingtian Capital. Mr. Yu, I feel the same way about what you said. How about this? Let's take advantage of this period to complete the second phase of the contract. No matter what the outcome of the second phase is, I will not let the boss spend these 2 days. All your hard work is in vain. The news he got from the leader was that the losses were extremely serious and should be cleared immediately. Seeing that Li Yuan had not rested for more than 40 hours in a row, he guessed that it was most likely true, otherwise Li Yuan would not have had to work so hard. If Li Yuan fails this time, the big national fund will definitely ask for more shares. What he can do is to mediate and try to retain as many shares as possible for Li Yuan. For example 20%. Yu stood up and said, "Okay, we happen to be both here, so it's not difficult to follow the process." The two soon began to prepare the contract, and Yu had the ability to sign it. But it will eventually be sent to Li Yuan for review. The time slowly came to 8 o'clock in the morning. After the two sorted out the contract, Yao Yingsong went to call his leader. He first told the leader that he had come back and had completed the second phase of the contract. Then he started talking about Li Yuan's situation, never mentioning the second phase of the fund. "Leader, Li Yuan hasn't rested yet. He has been here since the day before yesterday." After saying this, the leaders of the National Fund were shocked. He quickly asked, "Are you telling the truth?" "Leader, how dare I talk nonsense about this matter?" Yu from Prime Capital, after rushing back yesterday, repeatedly tried to persuade Li Yuan to take a rest, but Li Yuan just didn't agree. There was no way, he could only stay in the office. Wait, Li Yuan is still talking to the trading room. Call. Li Yuan didn't go to the trading room. Originally, he was in the trading room, but after Li Yuan went home, there seemed to be some problems with the situation. He hasn't been here since the morning before yesterday. However, he has been communicating with the trading room, and the phone call between them has not been hung up so far. Yao Yingsong didn't know whether he had failed. That was all he could say. In this way, even if Li Yuan really didn't succeed in the end, the big national fund would be embarrassed to be so harsh. After all, it is obvious that Li Yuan is really hard-working. Then why don't you advise him to take a rest as soon as possible? Forget it if he loses the money, we can still open 3 phases. Nothing can happen to people. Leader, even you can't persuade him. I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to persuade him. The person on the phone thought for a while and said, "Let's go to the trading room and tell him that no matter what the outcome is, we will liquidate the company first. We won't open 3 tranches before the end of the year. Let Li Yuan have a good rest." For a large national fund, there is some dissatisfaction with Li Yuan, which has nothing to do with cooperation. the position of cooperation remains unchanged, then they have to be responsible for Li Yuan's health. Fighting Li Yuan to death would not do them any good. He was worried that he had high blood pressure, so he didn't watch anything in the past 2 days. Anyway, he and Yao Yingsong thought the same. As long as the situation was normal or profitable, Li Yuan would not work so hard. Not taking health seriously at all can only mean that Li Yuan is doing his best to save funds. But if Li Yuan doesn't agree, What? You can't even make the decision on this kind of thing? You have to remember that you are our spokesperson, and you have the absolute right to speak on this matter. Hurry up and do it. Upon hearing this, Yao Yingsong said, "Okay, I'll go right away." He had gotten what he wanted. With the words of the leader, the next step to fight for Li Yuan's interests will not be so abrupt, and the leader will be more tolerant. The most important thing is that he has an excuse. Otherwise, if you directly support Li Yuan and plan benefits for Li Yuan, your own leaders will definitely doubt your position. Maybe his leader also knew, but at this time there was obviously no other choice. Li Yuan's move was too cruel. At least from now on, Li Yuan seems to be playing the emotional card after failure, a bitter trick. He hung up the phone and came to the trading room. It was past 8 o'clock at this time, and the traders in the trading room were not very busy. Yu Yu was still talking to Li Yuan over there. He walked over and winked at Yu Yu. Yu Yu said into the phone, "Boss, Manager Yao is back. He has something to say to you." "Well, let him talk." Li Yuan's voice sounded a lot more energetic, completely different from yesterday. After Yao Yingsong came to the mobile phone, he immediately said, "Boss, my boss just called me and said that no matter what the current situation is, we will liquidate it first. The main reason is that I want you to have a good rest." The second phase itself was opened in a hurry. The leader doesn't want you to waste your energy on this. This was said very tactfully. After Li Yuan heard this, he thought for a while. "Okay, let's liquidate it." Yao Yingsong breathed a sigh of relief, but he was afraid that Li Yuanfei would insist. "Okay, then you can rest quickly and I'll be in charge of the trading room." "Well, don't worry. I still have some things to deal with here. You can sort out the reports first. There are no transactions for the time being." "Okay, if you need anything, please contact me. I'll be here at any time." Just like that, after Yao Yingsong hung up the phone, he told Yu Yu and started to sort out the reports. It was time for the trader to change his shift, and there was no one to help him. The main reason is that the final data is confidential and only 3 people in the entire company know it. Traders will divide capital areas into different areas. At most, they know their own data, but not all the data. Unless they communicate in private without Li Yuan around. When Yao Yingsong was sorting it out, he found something was wrong. After only half an hour, he was confused. Li Yuan is doing long Bitcoin, and every contract he opens is a huge profit. There are currently $2 billion in the account, which is already a lot of profit. After all, the second phase has only been open for 4 days. But these $2 billion are completely insignificant compared to the $20 billion contract. The entire account actually contains contracts worth more than $20 billion and $2 billion in cash. He glanced at the trader who had just changed his shift, and immediately called someone in and asked, "What's going on with the account? Is the $20.6 billion contract real?" The trader said, "Manager Yao, it's true. But there is a problem now. These contracts are restricted and we can't trade." "What's the meaning?" It should be that the boss made too much money there. The other party unplugged our network cable, and these contracts can't be sold no matter what. The boss has no good solution at the moment. All the funds should only be the money in the account." Yao Yingsong. Earn too much. Force others to unplug the internet cable? Is this realistic? Before, everyone was thinking about not embarrassing Li Yuan and not letting him take the initiative to face this failure. What he said was so tactful. At this time, the trader continued, "Manager Yao, the boss told us before that maybe you can solve this matter." Yao Yingsong understood. Behind him is a large national fund. Not many people dare to pull out their network cables. It is very unwise to pull out the network cables of a large national fund for more than $20 billion. In other words, as long as he reports this matter, the other party will definitely admit it. That way, all contracts can be sold. But Yao Yingsong took a deep breath. Because this result is even more shocking than the last time. The first issue was already very mysterious, but the second issue turned out to be even more outrageous. In just 4 days, $1.5 billion turned into $22.6 billion. After removing the $6 billion in leveraged funds, there is still $16 billion left. 4 days, net profit of $14.5 billion. He looked at the trend of Bitcoin, which was currently at $32,800. He immediately left the trading room and called his boss. The sooner this matter is resolved, the better. If the price drops, it will affect profits. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 218. Although Li Yuan hasn't slept enough, his overall energy has recovered a lot. After taking a few simple bites, I started to clean up the contracts in my account. He can't understand the current price of Bitcoin. But in another 3 or 4 hours, it will definitely fall back. He could go up against the big national funds by saying that the bigger the storm, the more expensive the fish. But he didn't want to bear the storm of more than $30,000. Although Qingtian Capital did not lose money, he certainly couldn't accept being cheated. So let's use Chenji's account to make money back. He originally wanted to sacrifice part of the profits from this account, mainly because the money could not be used temporarily, and he was easily targeted because he sucked too much money in Bitcoin. Now he is being targeted even before he has even sucked blood. Then all previous tacit understandings are completely void. He frantically sold out the contract in his hand at a position between $32,800 and $33,000. There are no restrictions at all, which is enough to illustrate the superiority of Chenji's funds. Money is actually not difficult to track. For example, the Qingtian Capital account is restricted. He sold out 3 billion last night and has about 9 billion left. And these 9 billion are now worth 11 billion. Since the other party didn't lock him up, he had to give it a good try. He should earn not a penny less. At the same time, the entire national fund, especially several leaders, gathered together and held a closed-door meeting. At first, when Yao Yingsong called them, they still didn't believe it. However, when they took a look at Qingtian Capital's data in person and added the report summary sent by Yao Yingsong, they couldn't help but not believe it. The person who spoke at this time had a normal expression. Although I felt embarrassed, I didn't show it. He pointed to the multimedia screen behind him and said, "This is the current situation. There is a problem with Qingtian Capital's account. This is all our money, and according to statistics, it has earned more than $15 billion. After all, Bitcoin prices have been rising." The people next to me frowned, and someone asked, "Is it undertaken by a regular platform?" "It was taken over by Morgan." "Then let's go talk to their people. After all, Bitcoin is not legal in our country. It would be best if they are willing to provide convenience. If it's other business, they can go to Morgan openly. If they don't lift the restrictions, they can even directly freeze Morgan's domestic assets. But Bitcoin doesn't work that well. The country can't just say it's illegal and they can take the lead in doing it, right? Once word of this gets out, There's no telling how much trouble there will be. Then it would be inappropriate for us to come forward in this matter. It would be best for the village chief to come forward. The village chief is directly in charge of Qingtian capital, so it is reasonable for him to stand up for Qingtian capital. It's not a problem to ask the village chief to come forward. The problem is that Morgan must have known that it was domestic funds before imposing restrictions. If they dare to do it, it means they have no intention of giving face at all, and the negotiation may not be successful. After these words came out, everyone looked solemn. Because it's true. The rules themselves are for protection, but now they become constraints. Finally, after discussing for half an hour, everyone decided to talk to the village chief first and ask the village chief to contact Morgan in the name of Qingtian capital. After the arrangements were made, several people stared at Qingtian capital's account and looked at the dense contracts inside. At the same time, the price of Bitcoin is also displayed next to it. Bitcoin is going crazy today. Is it going to hit $35,000? Then our contract should earn more. At the beginning, when Yao Yingsong was working on the report, the price of Bitcoin was $32,800 US. At this time, it was already $34,000 US unknowingly. And released the amount of heaven. From 12 noon yesterday to now, a total of $28 billion US have been traded. Almost in the blink of an eye, hundreds of millions of dollars can be seen being transacted. In the past 2 or 3 minutes, the transaction volume has increased by 5 to 6 billion US. How did Li Yuan dare to participate in such a complicated game? And he forced the other party to this step. It's completely unclear how the chips are distributed. He was so courageous to dare to use such a high leverage to rush in. How about we call him and have a chat? But please don't. Li Yuan hasn't rested for 40 or 50 hours. He is sleeping soundly now. Let's wait until he is in better condition tomorrow. No one spoke. I just stared at the board and tried to deduce the situation. Unfortunately, the board was too crazy. I didn't know where the chips came from. They were smashing them out crazily, and then there were also funds inside that were crazily received. The momentum is very strong, and he went for $35,000 US. I feel that the higher the price of Bitcoin rises, the less likely it will be for Morgan to let it go. Sigh, just wait for the news. Lao Yang has already rushed over. He should give feedback in half an hour at most. You said, if it's more than 10 billion US dollars, do you have an explanation? This sentence was unclear, but everyone around him showed thoughtful expressions. After a while, everyone shook their heads in unison. There's no way to say it. If it's US $30 to 50 billion, it's about the same. After all, money is needed elsewhere. To be honest, we got our money back anyway and made a small profit. The other party didn't do everything right and just asked us to give up. So even if we don't get much money back, I don't care much. On the contrary, I worry that others will target Li Yuan. Just arrange bodyguards for him. It's not about bodyguards. What kind of bodyguards can you install for your own people? Huh? You mean the village chief and the others? Absolutely. They are all so poor now. If they knew that Li Yuan was here, do you think they would steal people from us? Li Yuan is famous in the stock market, but that's it? The ability to make money in any market, or such an exaggerated ability, is what makes people covet the most. Not only the village chief's side, but also the village chief's leadership is under greater financial pressure. After all, how can such a big country not be short of money? If he had money, 002 would have been in the water a long time ago. The atmosphere became inexplicably heavy. Li Yuan's energy is limited, and it is already very difficult to cooperate with them. It is impossible to take on other projects. So, once someone else sets their sights on Li Yuan, they will most likely withdraw from their side. Before, I felt a little unwilling to lose to Li Yuan and let him take the initiative in the future. Now it may be a good thing. We cooperate with Li Yuan unconditionally, and Li Yuan will always favor us. After all, with other departments' cooperation, he still needs to readjust. But we can't give much to Li Yuan. Other departments give a lot. Who can say for sure what will happen next? Several people instantly went into emo mode. Half an hour later, more emo came. After the village chief learned of the situation, he contacted Morgan, but the other party directly told him that he didn't know anything and needed to investigate. How could you not know about such a thing? Without even knowing this, where does Morgan's tens of billions of dollars in profits a year come from? The village chief was not contacting a small employee or even a small manager. He was contacting the absolute person in charge of Morgan in the country and the absolute top management within the entire Morgan group. It was clear that he wanted to delay time. Now that Li Yuan had entered the village chief's site, they couldn't even get the money this time, and it was a loss to their grandma's family. Then, they called Yao Yingsong and explained the situation here. The main purpose is to ask Yao Yingsong to convey it to Li Yuan to see if Li Yuan has any solutions. This is not to pose a problem to Li Yuan, but to express an attitude to Li Yuan, that is, he has won this time, and in the future, they will completely follow Li Yuan's wishes for this fund. There can be no solution to this matter, except to break up the relationship and forcibly detain Morgan's domestic funds. By then, Morgan will definitely publicize the official conclusion of Bitcoin trading. Even if this matter is blamed on Qingtian Capital, there will still be a lot of trouble. This move can kill 1,000 enemies and cause 800 losses to oneself. Just for more than $10 billion, it is not worth it at present. This is the statement they discussed before, and it currently does not meet the conditions for its production. Yao Yingsong left a message for Li Yuan. Unexpectedly, Li Yuan quickly replied to the message and said to call him later. At this time, Li Yuan looked at the skyrocketing price of Bitcoin, recalled the message just sent by Yao Yingsong, and laughed. With more than $10 billion, he started to pull out the internet cable, which shows that Morgan is not doing well. It's obviously a big deal. He can make a net profit of 20 to 30 billion US dollars. Even if it's not all owned by one family, it's still a big profit. If you have the ability, you can throw it away yourself. Everyone rushes up based on their strength. If they can't win here, it's a matter of ability. After all, when they didn't have any initiative at the beginning, they didn't blame the other party for having more chips. The pros and cons: I have already weighed the price secretly. They have fewer chips and can throw them quickly. The disadvantage is that you have to grasp the market trend, there is no way to guide the market trend, and you are in a passive situation. This situation did not occur naturally, but was created step by step by Li Yuan. Slowly moving from being passive to having a little bit of initiative. As a result, the table was turned over. 2 billion? Sending beggars away. He stayed up for 2 days just for the profit of $500 million. Although the big national fund wanted to count him as the winner, he had not yet reached the point where he needed others to calculate. It was already 11 o'clock at noon, and the price of Bitcoin began to fall. From a high of $35,000 to $33,000 at this point. As for Chenji's account, there is no more, no less, a total of $12 billion. Another half hour passed and the price dropped back to $31,000. Li Yuan started buying. But this time, instead of using the contract, I directly used the wallet to receive Bitcoin. This thing is time consuming and he has a lot of funds. The reason for this is mainly because they are worried that Morgan will continue to do something big. They are similar to brokers. When they start a long contract, the other party will buy a certain amount of Bitcoin in proportion to the contract. If they open a short order, they are lending out the Bitcoin they hold. To put it bluntly, no matter how you open the contract, the chips are in Morgan's hands. Once the other party really cheats, they may not open a contract for you at that time. He needs to hold some chips of his own. After all, the other party has flipped the table. If he has chips in his hand, he can just start smashing them when the time comes. Even if it is a platform, it is just a little troublesome to operate. While waiting, he called Yao Yingsong. Soon the call was connected. "Boss, why haven't you rested yet? I can't sleep right now." There's no response from Morgan, right? "Yes, this matter is a bit troublesome and not suitable for public disclosure, so we have no good solution for the time being." "Well, then you go contact Morgan and tell them to sell all our contracts to short positions. They will definitely be willing. By the way, double the leverage to give them a chance to blow us up." "What? Boss, this?" Yao Yingsong's tone was obviously shocked. "Because this is clearly seeking death. The total number of contracts is more than 20 billion. Even if leveraged funds are removed, there are still 14.5 billion US dollars at this time. Add in leverage, and that's $29 billion in short positions. With such a huge short order, Morgan must try their best to blow it up, right? Just tell them that if they dare to take the $35,000 position, all the money will be given to them. Li Yuan must lay the bait. In fact, the bookmakers behind Bitcoin have not spent much money, because the price of Bitcoin has been rising. If $40 billion was used at the beginning, then at most $60 billion is used now. After all, many chips are idling, and most of the profits of Li Yuan and Qingtian Capital are from those liquidated short orders. It is easy to understand the idling of chips. Morgan and others are long in the market and have funds to short sell from their platform. They use the money to buy their chips and then sell them to them. Of course, there must be other platforms doing that, but the overall number of chips on the market is limited. They control 60% of the chips. Naturally, the proportion of idle chips is also relatively large. The current situation is that Li Yuan's two accounts have a surface profit of 20 to 30 billion US dollars. In fact, they have only added 20 billion US dollars in costs to the bookmakers represented by Morgan. After excluding the increased chips, Morgan and the others can only add more. Just $10 billion. The other money is all small funds that have been cut off in the past few days. It's just that Li Yuan cut too much and Morgan and the others had no more cuts, so they restricted the contract transactions here. If the network cable is unplugged, the contract cannot be uploaded to the trading system at all, and it is naturally useless. If it can take away Li Yuan's front, Morgan will spend another 30 billion US dollars to come in without any hesitation. Yao Yingsong took a deep breath, waited for dozens of seconds and then said, "Boss, do you really not think about it anymore? What do you think?" "Yes, I understand, and I will do my best to convince the leader." Li Yuan hung up the phone. After all, people from the big national fund must come forward in this matter, otherwise Yao Yingsong would not be qualified to negotiate with Morgan, and no one would even see him. At this time, for the bookmakers inside, the more short orders there are, the better. Without empty orders, they would be unable to sell. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 219. The long to short turn itself is also easy to understand, but this time it is special. Under normal circumstances, a long order is sold and a short order is reopened, which are two transactions. But now their multiple contracts are restricted, and they can only modify the contract directly, which is equivalent to making two transactions into one. It all depends on whether Morgan agrees or not. Li Yuan didn't believe they would refuse. If a 1/10,000th record appears and they refuse, then they will find an opportunity to clear out the chips in Chenji's account and run away. The price of Bitcoin has stabilized, just around $31,000. At this position, the dealers are slowly releasing their chips. There are many people behind them, and the data has been carefully calculated. It is most appropriate to release some chips at this position. Because the price fluctuates around this, people who buy have no urge to sell, which can help them lock in some chips. And because it has dropped several $1,000s from the highest point, short orders are not dared to be opened at this position. The overall atmosphere is quite strong. Li Yuan not only bought, but also used 5 times leverage to buy. In fact, with his funds, there is no need for such high leverage, because he cannot buy too much. With a target of $10 billion, it is unlikely to exceed $20 billion. Not to mention the lack of time, if they bought so much, people like Morgan would smile crookedly. The purpose of using leverage is to reserve some funds. The purpose of taking the chips is just to leave half a whole card for yourself. More than $10 billion in chips are not the main force this time. As Yao Yingsong conveyed Li Yuan's intention, the National Fund was the first to be shocked. Li Yuan wants to fight with Morgan? According to Li Yuan, he was betting that Morgan wouldn't dare to spend money to get in. According to the price set by Li Yuandong, Morgan will have to spend a lot of money. We have at least $16 billion here, and Morgan will have to put $32 billion in our account. Li Yuan is betting that Morgan will continue to raise the price of Bitcoin after it is unable to spend more than $30 billion. If he wants to clear the more than $30 billion, he must at least raise the price of Bitcoin to 50,000 taels. $1,500. For the bookmaker behind it, the biggest difficulty every time it pulls up is to fill it with funds. To increase the market value of $10 billion, at least $2 billion must be filled in, otherwise it will not be able to sustain it. Although the bubble is getting bigger and bigger, the reality is that more and more money is spent. From the beginning, Bitcoin's market value of more than $100 billion can be achieved by $30 to $50 billion. The current market value of Bitcoin exceeds $400 billion, and the scale of funds in it has exceeded $100 billion. If the price of Bitcoin is raised to more than $50,000, the market value will exceed $700 billion. This is a terrifying market value that cannot be controlled by one or two institutions. The data involved is also more complex. Is there a possibility that Li Yuan is retreating in order to advance? After taking the short order, Morgan will not pull out the network cable, and he can trade. Unless Morgan pulls him out in a short period of time, otherwise Li Yuan will be completely you can come out, but at most you will lose a little money. No matter what, it is better than being restricted before. This sentence caused everyone to think. As long as there are no restrictions, with Li Yuan's ability, it shouldn't be a problem to spend billions of dollars. Someone's eyes lit up, this is a good move. Being able to get back billions of dollars already makes them very satisfied. They never thought that they could do this before. The main reason is that the judgment of the situation is unclear. Then let's do it. But what if Morgan pushes the price of Bitcoin to $60,000? Or higher? Those short orders. A basin of cold water was poured down. If that happens, they will still owe tens of billions of dollars. So Li Yuan still has to take a lot of risks this time. Who knows when the price of Bitcoin will rise? But since he said it, he should have considered this. And now that Li Yuan is actively helping us, we have no reason to refuse. If it really causes greater losses, maybe it will be a good thing. Li Yuan will feel I'm sorry, please cooperate with us for a few more issues. Sure enough, after thinking about the problem from a different angle, everyone suddenly became enlightened. No matter what, this is a good thing. So, the matter was settled. Li Yuan did not receive the message from Yao Yingsong until after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and by this time the price of Bitcoin had begun to rise slowly. At about 8 o'clock in the evening, Bitcoin once again reached a high of $35,000. At the same time, Morgan made contract changes. $32 billion went directly into Qingtian Capital's account, but this money was restricted and could only be used to repay short contracts. After the contracts were repaid, whatever money was left was their profit. So, the lower the price of Bitcoin, the lower the value of their contracts, and the more money they have left over after repayment. This contract was not shown on the market, but the dealer actually took out the money. People at Qingtian Capital can't sleep. People at the big national funds can't sleep. Bitcoin dealers can't sleep. Li Yuan's contract conversion directly brought the battlefield atmosphere to the highest point. The dealer did not allow Li Yuan and the others to run away at this position, so they could only pull up. At the same time, as the price of Bitcoin rises, more short orders will pour in from the sidelines, and they will face great challenges. But they have to eat Li Yuan's money. As long as they liquidate their positions, these $32 billion will become their high-level takeover, allowing them to leave with huge profits. It is really stressful for them to get more than $50,000. Including Li Yuan's more than $30 billion, they have invested hundreds of billions of dollars in Bitcoin, which is too much money. Next, the control of the disk will be stricter. They also knew that a few hours ago, more than 10 billion chips were traded, and that the chips were long orders at this time. If that amount of money doesn't destroy the market, they have a high chance of pulling it up, and it won't cost them much money. Even if there are overwhelming empty orders, they are not afraid. The more short orders you have, the more you make. They are most afraid of multiple orders destroying the market at the critical moment. But facing Qingtian Capital's $16 billion in profits, they had no choice. This is the largest short position. As long as the price rises by 50 points, the $16 billion can be earned. And even if it rises 50 points, the profit earned from that long order is not as high as theirs. Not to mention that more short orders will be generated in the process of rising. Overall, success or failure lies in this. Bitcoin has skyrocketed for 3 consecutive days, which has caused a big stir around the world. At least tens of millions of people are watching, and the number of people participating will also increase by an order of magnitude. This is their last chance. If they fail to seize this opportunity, it will be difficult for the entire Bitcoin market and no one will be able to control the market. If anyone controls the market, Bitcoin will die. They must make enough money today and then bring down the price of Bitcoin. As long as the cost can be recovered, the price can then be lowered, and other large funds can enter the market, then it doesn't matter if you don't make money this time. Anyway, you still have chips in hand, and you can just get the profits back later. Their plan is complete enough. After defeating Li Yuan, 1/3 of the chips will be released immediately. Then he started to smash the market himself, and then sold out 1/3 of the chips, and finally kept 1/3. It is not difficult to recover the cost of 2/3 of the chips. It has been calculated through the big data model and there will be no problem. Anyway, the contract is over there and it can't be escaped. They have a clear grasp of the empty orders in the market. Li Yuan's position was liquidated, and other contracts would also be liquidated. The liquidation funds were at least $70 billion. They only need to work hard in the early stage, and the accounts that have been liquidated in the middle and later stages will be forced to buy, without them needing to spend any more money. The whole thing is divided into 4 steps. The first step is to raise the price to $37,000, absorb short orders, and get ready to go. The second step is to directly raise the price to $50,000, without giving short orders a chance, and blow them up instantly. At this time, the short-selling channels on the small platforms they control are closed and other short-selling orders are prohibited from entering. The third step is to wait for those short orders to trigger forced liquidation, then raise the price to $53,000, which will blow up Qingtian capital. The fourth step is to start shipping at this position and receive funds from Qingtian capital. They did not think about continuing to pull and causing Qingtian capital to lose more money. It's not that they don't want to, it's that they can't do it. At 12 o'clock at night in China, the first step was carried out in an orderly manner, and the empty orders were slowly increasing. At 2 o'clock in the morning in China, the number of short orders absorbed exceeded $6 billion, while the number of short orders reduced was less than $1 billion. The first step has been completed. Starting the second step, multiple platforms worked together to pull up the price instantly at 2 o'clock in the morning, using nearly $10 billion of funds to directly push the price to $50,000 in an extreme period of time. Back and forth, it took a total of 36 seconds. During these 36 seconds, many platforms were completely unable to place orders, and the ordering channels were blocked. By the time they reacted, it was already too late. All short orders were exploded, triggering liquidation. Scattered long sales cannot prevent the system operation after the positions are closed, and the price of Bitcoin continues to rise. However, at this time, the rising price was suddenly suppressed by a large amount of short orders. They have thought that the higher the price, the more short orders will be. But I never thought that someone would place so many short orders. They have shut down the short orders on those small platforms. The purpose is to prevent people from crazy opening short orders at high positions. However, Morgan's platforms did not dare to open the door openly. At most, they restricted individual accounts. After all, once they also close the door, the loss of credibility will be too great. However, through its own platform, more than $40 billion of short orders were forced out, and the liquidated funds were forcibly collected. It was their turn to harvest the money. At this time, the third step was only halfway through, and it was suddenly suppressed. They have no choice but to invest close to $20 billion again and eat this sum. Then continue to pull up. Through the contract, they learned that the other party was 5 times leveraged. In other words, another 20 points increase. You know, as a platform, they have to provide contracts themselves, so they can't use leverage on the chips. After all, if someone wants to buy 5 billion, you can't give him 5 billion leveraged chips, right? That's double leverage, and it explodes all of a sudden. If you want to raise another 20 points, it's either impossible or the financial pressure is too great. At the same time, a more dangerous situation emerged. Many large funds discovered that there were still people who could open short contracts, and they all poured into large platforms. They gradually became overwhelmed. The price of Bitcoin once fell below $50,000. At this time, they have only one way, and that is to close Morgan's short selling channel. It's just that, too many of the short orders that poured in during this period were Western funds, and they didn't dare to impose restrictions. Unlike before, when they dared to engage in Qingtian capital, they knew that Qingtian capital would suffer losses and no one would speak for them. Closing the short selling channel is already the limit. The loss of reputation is inevitable, so you must protect your funds first. As long as those short orders are not restricted, the reputation lost at this time can be restored later. They are a world-class conglomerate. They did not close the channel at the beginning because of reputation considerations. As a result, some problems still occurred. This step is at best a remedial step. Ever since the $40 billion in short orders came out, the entire plan has deviated significantly. Analysts began to nervously calculate how much money would be needed to push the price above $60,000 when the short order channel was closed. The calculation results are out, it only requires less than $20 billion. But this result definitely comes with a price. The price is that the number of chips in their hands will exceed 110%. Nearly half of the chips were short orders. Originally they had about 50% of the chips in their hands, and they had been absorbing the chips during the promotion stage. At the same time, they took the chips in their hands to the platform to open contracts, and the short contracts they opened were eaten by them. Almost 50% of the chips are empty. They nominally own 110% of the chips. To put it simply, there are 10 apples on the market, they buy 5, then lend these 5 out as a contract, and then buy another one. After raising the price of apples, they let those who bought their apples sell them. If you drop it, they will buy it again. In this way, there will be 4 apples on the market that no one is buying or selling. They have 6 apples in their hands, plus the 5 others. There are 11 apples. The remaining 4 apples, placed in Bitcoin, are dead links. Because according to the survey, the size of Bitcoin's dead chain accounts for 38% of the current market volume. This data was calculated before they participated, that is, 4 months ago. If placed in the stock market, those 4 apples are equivalent to restricted stocks, which do not participate in market circulation and have no value in themselves. They just want to sell all the apples in their hands, and in the end the apples returned by others will be kept in their hands as profits. But the current situation is that the number of apples in hand exceeds expectations, and it is difficult to sell them all. Not only that, but people are now borrowing apples. The more apples you lend, the more apples you will end up with. From the beginning I longed for short orders, to now I want all those short orders to get out. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 220. It is difficult to increase the number of chips in their hands, but the chips will be converted. Originally, only 30% was lent out, which was within their acceptable range. Now it has directly become 50% or even more. Even though the price of Bitcoin is over $50,000, in fact, the money in it is not even 150 billion. Based on a total of 21 million coins, the market value exceeds 1 trillion. Based on the 13 million coins currently mined, the market value is also 650 billion. As the largest bookmaker, they can still gamble. But it was only a few hours. If all the short orders cannot be completely killed in these few hours, the follow-up will be particularly troublesome. It attracts too much attention. Once word spreads across the internet that it cannot be shorted, it will create fear in people. The price is over $50,000, can't it be shorted? What a waste of time to participate. Without anyone participating, it means they can't make money, and in the end all the chips will fall into their own hands. Expand the current short orders as soon as possible, then lower the price, restore the short selling channel, and let more funds participate. This must be done. Otherwise, if all the short orders are taken, they will not make any money. At most, they will not lose much. After planning for so long and mobilizing so much money, they couldn't accept this situation. So, do it. They began to mobilize funds and continue to increase. As for the National Fund, even though it was already 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 or 6 people were still sitting in a small room. Everyone was smoking, and even though the exhaust system was running, the whole room still looked smoky. A big screen hung in front of them with the price of Bitcoin on it. When they saw Bitcoin reaching $50,000, they already had quick-acting heart-saving pills in their hands. Because going a little higher means that Qingtian capital will be liquidated. Fortunately, a large amount of funds suddenly came out in the middle, and a lot of chips were handed out to those guys who were forced to liquidate their positions, stabilizing the price. The situation is much better than it was at the beginning, but the whole situation is still not good. The big bankers inside are obviously determined to blow up Qingtian capital. At this moment, there was a knock on the door outside. After a few sounds, the door was opened. A young man said, Several leaders have just received the news that all major platforms have closed the Bitcoin short-selling channels, including Morgan. As soon as he said this, he stood up with a hot temper. This is just being a hooligan. There is no short-selling channel, which means that Qingtian Capital has no helpers at all. No matter how powerful Li Yuan was, he could only stare blankly at this moment. You don't even have any shame. They had never been so angry. Originally, Qingtian Capital had already won and only needed to sell the contract, but in the end, it was tricked. Now turning from long to short was a choice made out of desperation. Originally, I just wanted to get back part of the profits, but the other party still didn't give me a chance. In a board game, winning or losing is naturally willing to accept defeat, but the last time the off-board moves were used up, now they are here again? Selling contracts was not allowed before, but now short selling is not allowed. Why don't you just rob these bullies from Western capital? Everyone's expressions were ugly, but some people didn't express their feelings. Not being able to go short means that there is almost no force that can suppress it. The liquidation of Qingtian Capital is inevitable. If the banker does not immediately take the chips after the liquidation, it will also cause all the short orders in the hands of Qingtian Capital to be converted into long orders, raising the price crazily and causing losses. I'm afraid I really have to make up the money. If they dare to play like this, don't blame us for not giving them face. I don't believe it. People have done it like this and they don't have an explanation. The worst thing is that you are shameless. The worst case scenario is that standing up in the name of a major national fund will result in nothing more than being punished, which will make many people feel unbalanced and damage some credibility. After all, it is officially forbidden to play with virtual currency, but he ended up doing it himself. There are bound to be some people who feel that the authorities are blocking their way to wealth. Just like a stock that has clearly issued a risk warning, if the stock price continues to rise, the village chief will be scolded for delaying making money. In fact, those people are like leaks everywhere, but swearing can make excuses for themselves. Hey, let's raise money for Li Yuan first, and then let him have a good rest. I'm not afraid of losing money, but I'm afraid it will damage his confidence. After all, he has never lost money since he entered the industry, let alone he has lost so much. In the financial market, the most fearful thing is to have self-doubt. Once this kind of doubt arises, he will be timid in subsequent trading, and it will be difficult for him to achieve success again. Well, let's prepare $10 billion first. The blame this time will fall on a few of us. Let's save Li Yuan first. It's not that they treat Li Yuan well, it's that they can't shirk the blame even if they want to. Apart from them, who can bear the loss of at least tens of billions of dollars? Dump it to Li Yuan? Wouldn't that mean breaking the lame man's good leg? Do you still want to cooperate in the future? Then I'll mobilize the funds. I'll go too, I don't want to stay here anymore. Together. Finally, there was only one person sitting there in the whole room. He had a wry smile on his face. Facing the upcoming liquidation, he didn't want to look at it, but it was a pity that he was too slow to speak. We can't all leave, right? What does that sound like? Morgan is actively contacting its partners. At the same time, funds are also being mobilized on a large scale. As their funds are gradually received, the price of Bitcoin is slowly rising. It soon topped $51,000. At this position, we encountered considerable resistance. It took an hour and more than $10 billion to get through. This has exceeded their budget. They initially thought that $20 billion would be enough to raise the price from 50,000 to 60,000, but now they have already consumed more than half of the funds without even taking the first step. Then it broke through to $52,000 with little resistance. This reassures them a lot. Perhaps most of the chips are concentrated in this area, and the next step will be much smoother. Unfortunately, this idea did not last long, and they soon encountered resistance again. For 2 full hours, nearly $30 billion were traded, but they failed to break through the $52,000 level. Short orders can no longer be opened, and the current chips are basically the long orders held before. How could there be so many chips? Are the chips they control fake? More than $50 billion, converted according to the current price ratio, that is 7%. In the entire market, where can you find someone who accounts for 7% of existing bitcoins? That's a full million bitcoins. How can so many of their data analysts make such a big deviation? They had doubts midway, but they were really just a little short of success. They are full of confidence and can definitely blow up those short orders. They believe in data, because in this world, data cannot lie. As more and more of their funds were consumed, the frequency of transactions on the entire disk was visibly reduced. Today's transaction volume has exceeded 100 billion. This is because the 32 billion from Morgan and Xingtian Capital have not been included. From this we can see how much chips the banker behind Bitcoin holds. The money spent today is more than all the previous ones combined. Although most of it is loaned out, how much can be returned? If the price does not rise, the funds returned will be much less than the funds lent. They know that the price of Bitcoin must not fall. I have to keep taking money. They can still come up with money, even if they borrow some other funds, they can come up with another 40 to 50 billion dollars. And just when this decision was conveyed, a piece of data appeared in front of them. They currently hold 120% of Bitcoins. Excluding the 50% lent out, the chips held actually account for 70% of the current number of Bitcoins. Damn this data. There was a roar in the office. There are obviously 38% dead links. This data cannot be faked. How many times did they go through confirmations and how long did they collect information before they dared to give this data? In other words, they can only hold 62% of the chips at most. Even if they eat up all the floating chips on the market, they cannot exceed 70%. Which link did the problem occur? Not only Morgan, but the rest of them were confused. Seeing this data, they temporarily stopped thinking about mobilizing funds. Without checking it out, there was no point in continuing to throw money into it. Because it will soon become a game for them alone. Whose money will they make? Another 2 or 3 hours passed, and pieces of data began to appear. After seeing those data, everyone's faces turned red. They forget that more than 40,000 bitcoins are mined every day. It's not that they have forgotten it, it's just that compared to the entire volume, they put this data into normal data growth from the beginning. Because the daily increase is only 0.3%, which is nothing compared to the fluctuations of Bitcoin. Even if you enter the market, it will not have any impact on the control. After 3 or 4 months of trading, they have further confirmed this point. The Bitcoins produced every day have actually become a catalyst, preventing the entire market from losing vitality due to market control. Who knew that within a few months, the data would deviate so much? Originally, the deviation of 7 points was acceptable to them because it still did not affect their control. But as they have more and more chips in their hands, and when they urgently need to cash out, those 7-point chips become their talisman. We should have eaten up all the chips on the market now, right? They were thinking in their minds. Reality has begun to tell them the answer. The price of Bitcoin was smashed. Their follow-up funds failed to keep up, and they poured out hundreds of millions of dollars in chips. They quickly broke the position of $52,000, and quickly dropped to $51,000, and then $50,000. When pulling, it is as difficult as climbing to the sky. When I smashed it, it was so easy. Reality tells them that more than. No one knows how many chips are left, unless they are ruthless and put in all the dead link data, and then plan funds based on this data. But then, Morgan couldn't afford that much money. Even with all their partners, They can't come up with it? There are still 5 or 6 days before New Year's Day. They need to make a lot of settlements and it is impossible to come up with another 1 or 200 billion. Including the nearly 200 billion currently invested, more than 150 billion will need to be taken out in the next few days. They have planned well, and everything will come back after they close the empty orders. Calculated based on 50% of short orders, as long as the price of Bitcoin is raised to more than 60,000, they can recover us $200 billion in funds. Excluding the 100 billion borrowed, the other 100 billion can be used as the cost of their holding chips. When the time comes, they still have so many chips in hand, and they can earn as much as they sell. As New Year's Day approaches, the global financial settlement system is very busy. Morgan just wants to launch a big business in the last few days of the year, earn tens of billions of dollars, whitewash this year's financial report, and attract more funds next year. Now I'm stuck. Bitcoin prices are still falling. The chips began to pour out as if they were endless. It has already exceeded 7%, and is even close to exceeding 10%. The more this happens, the less confident Morgan and the others feel. How many chips are still left? Could it be that all the dead links have been cracked? They had obviously arranged for people to do the test a long time ago, and it was impossible for the dead link to be cracked. Has anyone discovered the USB flash drive from a few years ago again? And then hundreds of thousands of bitcoins were found inside? Is this really possible? Bitcoin price drops below $49,000. Everyone is anxious. These partners are reliable people and will not betray them at this time. But this matter is led by Morgan, and they need to give an explanation. To advance or to retreat? Boss, we can't track the $40 billion in short orders and can't make restrictions. This is what troubles Morgan the most. They can only restrict accounts, but cannot restrict their own systems. Once your own system is restricted, your own people will not be able to trade. And it restricts the entire system and purely destroys the brand. The Morgan brand is worth us $500 billion. The previous restrictions on opening short orders limited some system functions, and they could find excuses to make excuses. Such as running out of chips or something like that. If you fail to open a short order, you will only be scolded, which is not particularly embarrassing in the world. The other party's short order has been established and will be converted into a long order at any time. If you can't open more orders, it will make you laughable. They didn't expect that the situation would turn into this. Cannot be reached. You can contact me, but the other party can't get through. Well, after all, Chen Ji is still in the detention center. Then contact Qingtian Capital. We want the funds from Qingtian Capital. Prices are falling and funds are more important than chips. Qingtian Capital still has $32 billion in hand. As long as part of it can be recovered, there is still room for resolution of the matter. No matter what happens, they can use the recovered money to continue to raise prices. Boss, what price should we negotiate with the other party? 10%, the position of $31,500 gave them a profit, and the overall profit was $3.2 billion. Okay, boss. 5 minutes later, the communication employee came back. Boss, the receptionist at Qingtian Capital cannot understand English.